Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
How about that Ben Johnson story? The guy's the hottest candidate all year to be a head coach, and he says he wants to stay as the offensive coordinator of the Lions.
Dan Campbell.
There's more to that story. I don't know what it is. We will get to that today. And we've also, by the way, Football Scoop has reported that Bobby King, the inside linebackers coach of the Titans, out of there. But I don't think that, again, the Titans firing coaches that were Mike Vrabel coaches should not be surprising to anybody because they fired Mike Vrabel. And not only did they fire Mike Vrabel, but they fired Mike Vrabel in large part because Mike Vrabel's coaching staff sucked. So why would you be surprised that they're firing Mike Vrabel coaches? But I digress. We need to start on the Predators because yesterday's game for the Predators was awful. And I couple it, I put yesterday, I put last night, and I put Saturday when they went to Edmonton and they got beat. And I put those two together. And I think where I sit today, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what we want out of this team this year and what we expect out of this team this year. Because I don't think the Predators are in a tailspin, and I certainly think, regardless of if they make moves ahead of the deadline to sell or if they make moves ahead of the deadline to buy, which I'd be a little surprised by, but whatever direction they decide to go in at the deadline, I don't think it really changes the fact that they will be competing for a playoff spot. So even if they blow it up and sell outside of trading Philip Forsberg, if they do anything like that, which they're obviously not going to do, then they'll still be competing for a playoff spot, just like last year. I mean, they really tore it up last year, and they still were competing for a playoff spot. And if they go for it, they won't magically add a player or two who will push them past kind of this group of wild card contenders in the Western Conference. LA, Arizona, St. Louis, Seattle, you're kind of all right there one way or another. But I look at last night where the Predators blew a 3-0 lead and lost a point by losing in overtime. And I look at Saturday's game where they played well, and I think they really played with effort and everything else. They just weren't good enough to be able to beat Edmonton. And I think it's pretty obvious that the Predators are what we all kind of thought they would be coming into the season. Now, maybe I thought a little too much because I didn't like the last coach, and I do like this coach, although I cannot believe he had 15. What's his last name? Gurianov, Ian?
Gurianov, yeah.
Why was he on the ice in 3-on-3 overtime last night?
Good question. He's fast.
He freaking stinks.
He can't finish, but he's fast.
Why is he on? But that, again, like I said, I like the coach. And so I just figured that the Predators were going to be the same team that they were at the end of last year, cut off the dead weight in Johansson and Duchesne, get rid of the bad coach, bring in a good coach, bring in Ryan O'Reilly, and that they would probably be 20% better if for no other reason because they changed the coach. But they're really kind of the same. Like, they're really kind of the same that they were last year. And I'm not mad about that. I mean, again, I think that there was a part of us that all thought there could be the possibility of this being a bad season for the Predators. And early in the year, it looked like it was going to be a bad season for the Predators. But the Predators aren't bad. And no matter what direction they choose to go, they will be competing for a playoff spot one way or another. Now, first things first. As much as my one ask for this season was one competitive playoff round, I'm willing to give that up right now as the chief goal. Because for me, that's not the chief goal. The chief goal is to do what's in the best interest of the organization over the long term. Because, again, not that one game against a really good team proves exactly what you are or what you're not, but that is a cup contending team in Edmonton. They've got the pieces. We've said forever when it comes to them, gosh, they've got so many good players. How is it that they never, ever win? And they might not ever win this year, but they certainly look like a team that could win. And considering that they're about to set a record, I think there is something to this. So I guess what I'm saying is now is the time for the conversation. Now is the time for, okay, should we be talking about the goalie? That is the conversation. Because as far as the other players on the roster are concerned, maybe somebody will want Gus Nyquist, which he's having a good year, and then you have to ask, okay, do we want to keep Gus Nyquist if we're the Predators, or do we want to deal Gus Nyquist because, well, quite frankly, he's probably never have a higher value. But this isn't about Gus Nyquist, right? Tyson Barrie's been on the trade block all year. I don't think anybody's given them a call. Now, Barry Trotz normally joins us on Tuesday. Barry will join us tomorrow since we'll be at Bridgestone Arena ahead of what is a huge game as far as the standings are concerned. But the real question is the goalie. And there's a lot of different factors that play into this. And the first is, are you committed to trading the goalie? Because once those discussions start being had, they will not stop. Like, you're not going to be surprised by a Saros trade. What will happen with a Saros trade is that Elliot Friedman will put out there that Nashville is receiving calls on goalie UC Saros, and you might even get and they're open for offers. Or Nashville thinks that Yaroslav Askarov might be ready to be a starting NHL goalie. Once that discussion is had, then it will explode. And the reason that it will explode is because UC Saros is a big name. And that is what drives media, trade, and off-season and in-season deadline talk. Big names. So once Saros' name comes out, everybody in Canada, TSN and Sportsnet and NHL Network and Elliott and Darren Drager and Pierre LeBrun will all be talking about Saros ad nauseum. It becomes the biggest story. It is a huge can of worms. And again, once that gets going, it's hard for me to envision the Predators saying, yeah, we're not interested in any of these offers, and UC Saros is going to be our goalie. So right now, we're having the discussion before the discussion happens. And I would say that I'm okay with trading the goalie. Because, again, I don't think you're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. I hope for one competitive playoff round. Part of the reason for why you would be able to get one competitive playoff round is because when he's on, and right now he's not on, but when he's on, I mean, did you see that third goal he let in last night, Ian?
Who, Saros?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, staring right at it.
Yeah, I mean.
Would have been nice if O'Reilly had won the draw, and it would have been nice if Fabro had been in the right spot.
Kind of a loose puck there, but yeah.
But come on. But again, he's not playing as well as he can play, which we can all agree on, which might be another reason to not trade the goalie. Because then it's like, well, are you getting maximum value if he's not playing as well as he's supposed to be playing? And so I want one competitive playoff series. I want, an exciting March, and March is a lot closer than we think. I mean, again, the next game is the Super Bowl. Once the Super Bowl comes, then February's half over. Then all of a sudden we're right to the trade deadline. I mean, I want an exciting March followed by one competitive playoff series. And if they could win that playoff series, it would be delightful. If not, it is what it is. They're on the right path with the minor league system. And, Barry's got a plan that I'm here for. And I'm okay with Milwaukee kicking butt and not calling all those guys up because, again, they want them to get confidence, and they want them to get the right amount of ice time and everything else down there. But you're going to have an opportunity to trade the goalie here. And you're going to be able to trade the goalie with a year plus of contractual term, which maybe means that this could be the time when his return might be the highest. And the reason we have to think about that is general managers around the league, head coaches around the league in certain spots that may or may not have goaltending, they might be on the hot seat. And if you're a GM who's on the hot seat, what's the point in keeping your first-round draft choice that won't play for 3 years? What's the point of holding on to that if you think that goalie might be what gets you into the conference finals or even the second round in some cases that could then keep your job? So the Predators have to decide first, because it wouldn't surprise me come deadline time if people start talking about, hey, do the Predators need to make this move right now? It would not surprise me if they call. But if you answer, it becomes the biggest story around the trade deadline. Unless another star player demands a trade or is not going to be able to come to an agreement with the team. I mean, wasn't Jacob Chychrun last year, wasn't he the number one story of the trade deadline? It's like, pfft. We're talking about UC Soros here. So again, the Predators are what they are. They are a playoff contending team. I think, regardless of what they do, trade the goalie, keep the goalie, they will be competing for the playoffs. If they buy, they'll be competing for the playoffs. If they sell, they'll be competing for the playoffs for this season. But you got the young guy tearing it up down in Milwaukee. He was drafted 4 years ago. He's ready. I'd be shocked if he's not ready for the NHL. So you got the young guy down at Milwaukee. We know your window's not open yet. We saw you on Saturday go up against McDavid and Draisaitl and the big boys that always give you a hard time in Edmonton. The team is playing hard. They played hard last night. They're just not winning a lot of games. Got to win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Kind of like a middle-of-the-road playoff contending team. So now it's time to have the conversation around the goalie. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones on this. 615-737-1025. And I do see some problems, by the way, when it comes to the idea of trade the goalie, which is what we're talking about today. But there are some potential issues that I want to go over, and then we'll get to your phones. 615-737-1025 on Stillman and Company. And again, tomorrow, we got a big one. If we're, again, wanting to compete in the playoffs, one competitive playoff series. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night against the Kings, you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad, and Robbie will be back tomorrow, but participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. That's a good man right there. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
Now coming on in, giving the puck back, and the pass goes off, and the shot and the score. Claude Giroux wins it in overtime for the Ottawa Senators here at 3:36.
Obviously got the start probably that you liked, and then things kind of deteriorated. What was the difference in the second?
Yeah, I thought got away from our game a little bit. Credit to them. They wanted a little bit more in the second period, and I thought fatigue set in. We went on a little bit of a stretch here, so I thought it was hard. Our legs weren't quite there, and then our legs weren't there, and our brain shut off in a few situations, face-offs, and gave up 2 face-off goals, kind of easy offense there. But showed a little bit of grit down the stretch where we know we didn't have our game, and we found a way to get a point.
Had some grit. You were up 3-0 in the first period. You get spotted a 3-0 lead in the first period. You have some grit. You win the game against that crappy Ottawa team last night. But again, it's not worth complaining about. The real question is, do you trade the goalie? Because again, I actually lean more on Saturday's game against Edmonton as like a measuring stick game of what this team is or what this team isn't than I do yesterday's game where I'm just frustrated that they didn't get a point. Now, I do wonder how I'm going to pose this to Barry tomorrow about the goalie, the trade deadline, the team competing, because LA, who you play tomorrow, they're right there with you in the standings, and they're going 100%. And they may be a team that trades for Saros. So it's like, do you look at them and say, well, hold on. Like, let's see, make the playoffs and whatever. Here's the problem with UC Saros, though, in trading him that I was talking to Vinkin about today, and then we'll get to your phones. Number one, he's not playing at a top-of-the-league level, which we all know he is capable of, and thus we would want a return when it comes to Saros for a top-of-the-league goalie. But again, he hasn't been that. Secondly, the past 2 Cup champions have just been winging it in net. And I don't love the idea of winging it in net, but I get it because the teams that are winning the Cup right now don't have Igor Shesterkin in net. Even the Predators, when it comes to how fickle these goalies are, I went and looked it up today. Pekka Rinne in 2016-17, he did not have a great season. He had a .918 save percentage, which is good. But the next year he was .927, which is elite. Won the Vezina Trophy. He had 5 more shutouts in 17-18. Go to the playoffs, Rinne was .930 and a GAA under 2. And in 18, .904. And if you've got a save percentage under 900, you stink. He was not good in those playoffs. So again, it goes back to the fact that the goaltending position is fickle. And so teams across the league are looking at their team saying, all right, what is it that's holding us back? What is it that's keeping us from competing? And some teams may say, goaltender, we need a top-of-the-line goalie, but he's not playing like it, number one. And then number 2, you acquire a top-of-the-market guy. He doesn't play top-of-the-league level when you need him. Or you could take some schmo, like, who's LA's goalie? Is it Cam Talbot?
Yep.
God, he's been everywhere.
Yeah.
He's like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Cam Talbot, you put him in there, and all of a sudden, Cam Talbot might get hot, and you can win games with him. So it's not like we're talking about a high-end big boy forward who is requesting a trade or won't re-sign with a team, or a team is looking to totally tear it apart, and they're going to put this guy out there on the market. We're not talking about that because, again, we're talking about a goalie. And there hasn't really been a precedent of what a high-end goalie goes for recently. Like, there hasn't been this massive goaltender trade where all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's what to expect in return for Saros. So when I'm thinking about, what would be a good return for Saros, I don't know, a first-round pick this year, a first-round pick next year, and a prospect. And it's like, yeah, you're not getting that for a goalie. Okay. So a first-round pick and a prospect? And so now Matthias Ekholm is worth more than UC Saros? So that's the real complicated aspect of this that we haven't really discussed much of, which is what is an actual return for a top-of-the-league goalie who is playing league average to right now below league average? So that's kind of another wrench into the equation. 615-737-1025. Your phone lines today are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland wants to start us off on this. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Adam?
Hey, man. So you know what's weird is I feel like where he lost me, because I don't want to be like, because you've accused me before of being like, hey, you just want to fire everybody. Well, I really don't, but I want good players, and where he lost me is the December 23rd game, and I don't know if you guys have beat on it or not.
Are you talking about really where you lost the goalie? The goalie lost you?
He lost me on that game, December 23rd against
the Stars.
The Stars game. I mean, the whole season changed that day. They were playing. They were so hot, and they were fun and young, and everything felt good. And then it's like, I don't know, it took the wind out of their sails, man. Like, yeah, we can get beat. Next thing you know, we give up 2 goals in like 5 seconds, and they haven't really been right since. Last night was the same thing. Like, I didn't feel confident up 3-0. I was like, well, they could lose. And then you see them start to score. I'm like, okay, here we go. And start seeing ugly passes and things look lazy. So it wasn't all Saros. But you're like, man, this dude's short. He's getting beat. Like, I don't know. It's not his fault, everything, but, like, he lost me against the Stars.
Seems a little overreactive. Thank you for your call, at least to me. Though, to be completely honest with you, I didn't see those 2 goals because I walked out of the arena. Just felt like they had it in hand. I walked out of the arena, and as I crossed over Demumbrian Street, when I got to bar lines, I left an arena with in a 2-1 lead for the Predators. I walked out of the building, and you know how when you walk out that Sobro entrance, they've got Pete and Terry's, and so I'm listening to Willie and Chris as I'm walking across Demumbrian Street. Bar Lines at the Omni has all the TVs up, and they've also got Willie and Chris playing. And as I crossed the street, it went from 2-1 to 3-2 Dallas, and that was a freaking gut punch. Like a freaking gut punch. But I also don't think, like, all of a sudden I've decided, because of that 1 20-second span in which Craig freaking Smith, of all people, scored a goal, that I'm going to sit there and say, okay, I'm out on the goalie now. I think he's bad. This is what I think about Saros. Let's say, he's, playing league average. And this goes back to the fickle nature of all these goalies. If he is playing league average right now, he is not playing well at all for him. What's likely to happen come playoff time? Or I should say, what is incredibly possible. Again, just like Pekka was not playing great in 2016-17. We talked all the time about, should they go with Saros, the kid from Milwaukee? Should they go with him over Pekka? And the old man got mad every time we talked about that and was basically like, Pekka is the goalie of this team. And then all of a sudden, Pekka steals Game 1, steals the first part of Game 2 of that Chicago series, steals Game 3, and then steals the end of the Anaheim series, and you end up in the Cup final where he almost stole that. So if Saros is not playing well, there's a pretty decent chance that, again, as I want one competitive playoff series, there's a legitimate chance that he might actually get hot when you want it, when I want it, which would be that one playoff series. And hooray, you beat Vegas. I don't think it'll happen, but it is feasible. But to be out on him after one game, that's a little too much for me. 615-737-1025. And then the other part of the equation, what does Barry think about this? And more importantly, what does Barry think about the other guy? Because the only reason that you probably would make this trade is because of Askarov, and he is lighting it up at Milwaukee. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, and we're right back to your phones as well here on our show. Vandy basketball. Tune in tomorrow as Vandy basketball takes on Auburn on 94.9 The Fan on the road. Pregame at 7:30, tip-off at 8. And coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. And then Thursday, 94.9 The Fan has Vandy women's basketball as they take on Ole Miss at home. Pregame at 6:15, tip-off at 6:30. Coverage also, again, available on the 94.9 The Fan app. By the way, Ian, did you see what the Ole Miss women's coach got mad about?
No, I don't think so.
They put up some guy that, rivals for Ole Miss, put up that like the women's basketball program costs them $8 million a year to operate, which is not a surprise. Women's basketball and baseball and basketball, unless you're Duke, those sports don't make money.
That's why they need football, yeah.
Yeah, those sports don't make any money. And she got super mad about how they were like, yeah, the women's basketball program minus $8 million, and she went crazy. And it's like, didn't everybody already know that this is how college sports works? Oh, well. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. As far as on the Barry Trotz ready meter, where is Askarov with the way that he's playing right now in Milwaukee?
Well, he's, I would say, early in the year he looked like a young top prospect who still looked like he had some minor league in his game. I would say that in probably the same around Christmas, it's changed. He sort of got to another glass ceiling. I want to say that it had a lot to do with him going from the black pads to the white pads, because it is known to a little bit of optics. But we wear black. I'm a overweight man. I wear black because it has no slimming effect, and I think wearing the black pads, he looks smaller than he really is. And then by putting on, he's changed his. We asked him to go with the white pads and the white gloves and all that. He looks massive in the net, and I think that's playing into the minds of the opposition now. They're trying to see the net, and you can't really see it. He's going, this guy's massive. So he's playing really, really well. He looks like he is breaking through what I call another glass ceiling as a prospect.
That was Barry a couple weeks ago. By the way, I love that. I love in our world of nerdy football analytics and, this gives you 1/10 of a second aerodynamic. Barry's like, he switched to the black pads and now he looks, he switched to the white pads and now he looks much bigger, I love Barry too. I'm an overweight guy. I like to wear black. I hear you, Barry. I hear you. The stats for Yaroslav Askarov are off the chart right now at Milwaukee. He's got a goals against for the season of 218. He's got a 921 save percentage, and in his last 10 games, he's got a 941 save percentage. Feels like he's ready. And that's the other part when it comes into this whole Saros discussion is, A, are you ready to pull the plug on Saros? B, what will you get in return for Saros, which we don't know. There is not a precedent out there for what you would be able to get. And then C, is the kid ready? And it kind of feels like he is. Now, tomorrow, those will be the discussions that we have with Barry, because these probably have to be the discussions that they're having internally. Because I was reading something at Daily Faceoff today about if the Predators were to decide to move on from UC Saros. And one of the questions was, will the Predators get worse if they move on from UC Saros? Because they would be going from UC Saros to Yaroslav Askarov. And right now, Yaroslav Askarov is playing like a top 10 pick at goalie. And they didn't draft him as high as they did to sit him for forever. So that's the other part of the equation. Ian, you think he's ready?
Probably not ideally to carry the load, every game. But it's hard to say unless you really put him up here and give him a good stretch,
Well, the other thing, too, is like Kevin Lankinen is kind of the insurance policy there.
Yeah. He's no slouch. He can start.
Yeah. That if they had to, if they traded Saros and Askarov wasn't ready after they brought him up and they had to go with Lankinen, they could do it. They could get through the rest of the season. They would win some games, lose some games, all of those things. They could do it. And so I'll be very fascinated to hear what Barry has to say tomorrow about where they are on where Askarov is and what that means for Saros' future as well. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says the Predators are already 90% rebuilt. The team needs time to mature before we'll see a cup run, and it is amazing that they are still competing for a playoff spot. I disagree. I do not think they are 90% rebuilt, because right now what they've got in Milwaukee is they're going tonight for their 11th straight win in Milwaukee. Now, I don't care if they win 11 in a row or they win, 15 in a row or 5. I don't care. But what it tells me is that all those young guys that Barry comes on and talks about that he really, really likes down there, whether it's Kimmel or LaRue or Shvetskov or whomever, that there's a chance that those guys might actually develop into first and second line forwards for this hockey club down the road, which is what they need, because outside of their first line, they can't score. Like, that's what is important. Like, right now, I am envisioning a world where Ryan O'Reilly is the number one center, Philip Forsberg is on the wing, and Joakim Kimmel is on the other wing. But they're not going to bring Kimmel up until they think he's ready. And while times have changed and people have less patience, Barry Trotz has told everybody that he is going to exercise caution when it comes towards calling those guys up. And let's not forget that they've got Tanner Mullendijk, who is not, going to be a part of this, and Matthew Wood, who they drafted in the first round, who's 18 years old in college. And they got more picks next year from the Jeannot trade and from, I think they have some more picks, Ian, from the Ekholm trade.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, they got picks.
They got picks.
Yeah. So don't tell me this is 90% rebuilt, because it's not 90% rebuilt. I mean, what we should be talking about in 2 years compared to what we're talking about now, it should be night and day. Now, I'm not saying that I expect them for sure to be top of the league, because in order to do that, one of these guys has to become, Patrick Kane, but we'll see. Or they just have to be really, really good top to bottom. Another texter asks, what happened to the youth movement? Only 2 players under the age of 25. Wasn't that the main theme of the offseason, was to make room for the kids? And that really hasn't happened. Plus, the few kids that have played worse this year, they're not developing at all. I disagree. Did you see that goal Tomasino had last night?
That was a nice goal.
There might be something with Tomasino and Evangelista.
His Tomasino's usage has been a little bit, confusing at times.
Yeah.
Because he's been flashing, I think, but they keep, just stashing him on the fourth line. So they haven't really moved him up. So whatever it is that we're kind of seeing, they're not.
They're kind of giving Tomasino the Tolvanen treatment.
Kind of, yeah.
Which is, we're going to put you down here with Cole Smith and expect you to produce, and then if you don't produce, then we're going to scratch you. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on this right now, because I still don't know if Tomasino should be playing a second-line role, or hard for me. Now, that goal last night was sweet. I mean, he went flying up the side last night on that goal. But, with Tomasino, he has like 2 good games, and then we don't hear from him for 3 weeks.
Let's see. They have 3 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, and 3 fourth-round picks in the upcoming draft.
God, that's a lot of chips.
And just 1 first, and then they'll have 2 firsts in 2025.
So somebody told me that, I think I saw it on Twitter, that the last pick that they made last year, like the David Poile kind of ceremonial pick, where New Jersey traded them a 7th-round draft choice in the draft last year in order to give David the moment, like the
I think I saw that from Max, maybe.
That might have been who it was. That apparently Aiden Fink is playing out of his mind this year.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, you do the Preds prospect stuff on your own time, as we always say on this program, but I just, they're not 90% rebuilt, Texter. They are far from it. Texter says, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Yossi, McDonough will all be gone before the rebuild is complete. The Predators have a long way to go, and as Preds fans, a long time to wait. I expect the Predators to be competing next year. I don't think it'll be the final product, because I don't think Wood will be up yet by then. I'm sure that, some of these other guys like Svechkov, they'll still be down there at Milwaukee. But, I expect next year. I expect Mullendijk in the lineup next year. I expect Kimmel in the lineup next year. I expect some of these prospects coming up next year. I expect Askarov in net next year, or Saros and Askarov in net. I expect to be good next year. And then a whole year under the system, under their belt. I expect the Predators to be good next year. Alex says the Cole Smith extension made 0 sense. Tomasino needs to be on the second and third line, and it's time to make room for Svechkov, LaRue, and Kimmel to get some more depth scoring. Again, all fair points. I don't really care about the Cole Smith signing because it's $1 million. But I don't know. All I ever do is hear people crap on Cole Smith. And then Cole Smith, chips one in here and is on the penalty kill there. And was it Alex Daugherty? I can't remember. Somebody put up on Twitter a comparison between him and Tanner Jeannot.
I think it might have been Alex from Penalty Box Radio.
Yeah. And Tanner Jeannot is having the same season Cole Smith's having.
If Smith's not even a little bit better, yeah.
I freaking was so whatever. That water under the bridge. They got a gazillion picks for him. It was the right call to keep him over Calle Yarncroke, but I knew he was a replacement-level player. And what makes a replacement-level player replaceable? That you can bring up some freaking Scarbini from Milwaukee, and it's the same player, and that is what Cole Smith is. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. UT might be in some trouble. I mean, the University of Tennessee, and the key word in what I just said is might. But apparently I rolled my eyes at first too. There may be something to this. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Nico, when you envisioned getting your first career start, I mean, man, did you think it would come out this way?
Yeah, I think I've always had confidence in this team. I knew we was going to go out there and take care of business. And, yeah, I'm glad we came out to win and got our seniors a ring and, a bone one, so I'm happy for that.
What does he show you about the future of what you can do here?
Everything, man. Since I've got here, I've gotten nothing but love from the coaching staff, and really the culture here has changed, and I'm happy to be a part of it. It's the start of our 2024 year, so going into it, I think we got a good mindset.
I know you're not surprised by this guy, but what impressed you most about his performance today?
I just think as a young player, the moment, nothing's too big for him. He's very in control and does a great job relating to all the guys at every position, every unit, offense, defense. He's a dynamic leader already as a young guy. Really pleased with his poise and playmaking ability today.
There you go. That was Nico after the bowl game, Josh Heupel after the bowl game. And out of nowhere, Pat Forty, Sports Illustrated Day, dropped a bomb. Tennessee football might be in some deep trouble. So I'm reading, I've read from 40, I've read from The Athletic, I'm reading ESPN. Tennessee is under investigation for violations related to name, image, and likeness, sources confirmed to ESPN on Tuesday. The investigation puts the Volunteers in the crosshairs for potential sanctions as a repeat violator. Tennessee is fresh off an NCAA ruling in the summer of 2023 in which it was charged with 18 Level 1 violations and fined a record $8 million. The scope and breadth of the current allegations, according to sources, include the potential for enforcement staff to charge multiple Level 1 and Level 2 violations. Level 1's the biggies. Level 1 and Level 2 violations, and apparently this has to do with their collective, which is the NIL collective that gives the money to the players. So basically, the worst-kept secret in all of college sports is that schools cannot give the players the money. So what the schools do is they set up the collective. They tell you to donate to the collective. You donate to the collective, and the collective signs the players to then go to the school. It's stupid, I know, but it's the world we live in. So apparently I was doing some talking with Joe, and Joe, he's GB Joe. He's boots on the ground sometimes down there. And Joe was telling me that this is not nothing. Because when I saw the headline, NCAA investigating Tennessee, part of me thought, so what? Like, they investigate all the time now. The NCAA doesn't do anything anymore. So it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about paying the players, so it's not like it's some huge scandal. We know they're paying the players. And as far as the NCAA dropping the hammer, it doesn't feel like they do that anymore. And it kind of felt to me like this last issue with Tennessee, with the whole Jeremy Pruitt fiasco, it kind of felt like that was the moment where the NCAA announced to everybody that, well, we don't really do anything anymore other than organize a basketball tournament. So at first I thought, okay, this is probably going to be like all the other ones where they, say, we're investigating. I saw that Florida was being investigated too. We're investigating. And then after they do all that investigating, it's like, okay, we investigated and you did this, and this. That'll be 5 scholarships. That'll be, again, an $8 million fine. Who cares about the $8 million fine? Tennessee will host an extra get to meet the players spring event, and they'll make the $8 million back. They'll sell another tractor ad, or they'll get, Johnny's Hardware to go ahead and sponsor the volleyball locker room renovation, and they'll be fine. But, again, talking to Joe, and I'm sure he'll have a lot more on this tomorrow on his show, but this is not nothing. And when I really realized that this was not nothing was when I saw that Tennessee, the chancellor, has come out and has basically slammed the NCAA about, and I'm paraphrasing here, they did all this fakakta stuff last year and in the previous years, and we abided by it 100%, and we were with them, and now they want to do this, and we've done everything right, and this is ridiculous, and this is preposterous, and that's the gist of what Donde Plowman had to say. But, I mean, again, like I was told, this is not nothing. And the one thing that the NCAA has tried to not do, or at least they've said that we are trying to not do this, what they've said they are trying to not do are the bowl bans. And if they give a bowl ban to Tennessee, I mean, we got a 12-team playoff now. Like a bowl ban, that carries way more weight nowadays than it did for every program not named Alabama over the last 15 years. I mean, a bowl ban, like, I'm a Louisville fan, right? Now, we haven't gotten any bowl bans, but let's say that the bowl ban was on the table for us 5 years ago. I guess we can't go to the Russell Athletic Bowl this year. Darn. Now, I mean, we would have been right on that cut line if we hadn't lost to Kentucky or whatever. And Tennessee absolutely might be right there on that cut line this year. They might be well into the playoff this year. And so if a bowl ban is a possibility, that could be a problem. According to ESPN's Pete Thamel, quote, a source familiar with the NCAA space told ESPN, I'd say there's a real uptick in NIL cases and portal issues. They are the two main areas of enforcement staff inquiry, and those go hand in hand. A lot of times the NIL money is being used as transfer bait. Well, no duh. So, I again, normally when I hear so-and-so is being investigated by the NCAA, at this point in my life, I've just kind of shrugged it off as, well, everybody, who cares? The NCAA doesn't do anything anyways, and the players get paid. But I was told this is not nothing. And another thing I was told, well, I don't know. Maybe Joe should save that for his show tomorrow. I'll just say this. This is a developing story, and Joe Rexroad will probably have a lot more insight on this tomorrow on Robbie and Rexroad, as he did contribute to the Athletic story that is up about this. But I'm not trying to put fear into anybody's heart and say UT football's in serious trouble. But my natural response when I see that the NCAA is investigating somebody is that it doesn't matter to me. Apparently, that might not be the case here. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, there was a big story today in the NFL that shocked me. I mean, truly shocked me. But I'm wondering, and kind of expecting, that there's more to this. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5-1063. The Game, by the way, do not miss Super Saturday. That's right. We're having our first Super Saturday. And on Saturday, February 10th, it'll be at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 for a fun, family-friendly soup fest benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. Enjoy live music, games for kids, and come sample soup from Bavarian Beer House, Mama's Java Cafe, City Tap, and more. To purchase tickets and to see all participating restaurants, go to thegamenashville.com/soup. You can also enter to win tickets to Super Saturday. Just text in the keyword soup, S-O-U-P, right now to 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So how about this little nugget? Gardner Minshew has been added to the Pro Bowl. Gardner freaking Minshew. You know, the only time the Pro Bowl matters to me is when they announce the initial team. Like, that matters. That is a feather in the cap. Who actually shows up to participate in the Pro Bowl games, which I will not watch this week, and I do not care about, no matter how many times during these playoff games they advertise for it. I know the Manning brothers are coaching. That is not going to get me to watch this on TV. But apparently Gardner Minshew is officially an AFC Pro Bowler. When's Malik Willis get his invite to the Pro Bowl? I feel like he should be at some point getting down there on the pecking order. So there was a big story today in the NFL that shocked me. I don't know about you guys, but when I saw that Ben Johnson was turning down the Washington Commanders and apparently also the Seattle Seahawks, but he wasn't really talking to the Seahawks. Ben Johnson turning down the Seattle Seahawks to stay as the offensive coordinator in Detroit. I said, what? The hottest candidate, Ben Johnson. I mean, 0% body fat on that jawline. Biggest little laminated play sheet in the league. Always drinks a latte. He's so smart, he runs the ball on third down with 3 timeouts under 2 minutes to go. Ben Johnson, who turned down the Panthers last year because he wasn't ready. Then he goes back to Detroit, tells Diana Rossini or his agent or sources close to Ben Johnson, tell Diana Rossini that, hey, he's ready this year for a head coaching job. Basically has one, what we all felt was lined up with the Commanders, and he turns it down. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, there's more to this story. Adam Schefter put out there that there's no addition to Johnson's contract. That it wasn't like the Lions went to Ben Johnson and said, we'll give you $1 gazillion if you will stay as our offensive coordinator or anything like that. According to Schefter, Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, and remember that when Schefter's reporting something that it's coming from either that person or their agent. So read it as such. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has 2 years remaining on his contract with Detroit. His deal was not adjusted to stay per league source, proving that money is not Johnson's biggest motivation. Boy, I tell you, Schefter, Ian, come on now. That's dirty.
Hey, man. What can you say? Football guy.
The Lions, according to Schefter, still could opt to adjust the contract down the line, but it is not the reason that Johnson returned to Detroit today. Period. Schefter writes, Johnson is loyal. Okay. I mean, I felt like Arthur Smith was pretty loyal, spent his entire career with the Titans, but when he got offered a head coaching job, he took it, and I didn't think that all of a sudden he couldn't be trusted. So there is something to this. Supposedly, the Commanders were on their way to Detroit to interview both he and Aaron Glenn, and then when Johnson let them know that he wasn't interested in the job, they said they're still going to go to meet with Aaron Glenn. There's something we don't know about this. This is fishy. And I'm going to tell you what I'm starting to think. I think that I might be more right than everybody else was about Dan Campbell. I'm starting to think that there might be something here in Detroit. Now, the Rooney Rule makes all of this incredibly tricky. In college football, for instance, Nebraska could fire its head coach and elevate the offensive coordinator within the span of 5 minutes. Can't do that in the NFL. And last week, when we proved that the Titans were right, well, we didn't prove it, but when it was proved that the Titans were right to not try to hang on for draft compensation for Mike Vrabel, we kind of said, it can't be a coach that's on thin ice. It has to be a coach that if they were to get traded for compensation, we would think, whoa. And it has to be a coach who's winning that another team would want to trade for. And I wonder if that might be what's happening here. This is a total and complete theory. I wouldn't even say that. It's not a theory. The one thing that I feel certain about is I feel certain that there's more to this story than just Ben Johnson was so upset that they didn't get it done this year in Detroit that he's going to stay and turn down what was probably $11 million, $12 million a year over 5 years to make $2 million for the next 2. You're talking about 4 guaranteed as compared to what's 5 times? $55 million? Nobody is doing that. Nobody is committing to $4 million over $55 million. I don't care how loyal they are. They could be a freaking socialist for all I care. They're not going to do that. So the one thing I know is that there's more to this story. The thing I'm wondering is Detroit looking to keep Johnson over Campbell? Whether that is right now, and because Washington's done all their interviewing and Seattle's done all their interviewing, that they could turn around and say, okay, we will trade you Dan Campbell for your first-round pick. Then we will interview 2 external minority candidates, get David Shaw on the phone. Then we will make Ben Johnson our head coach. And let me just say this. If that's what ends up happening, oh my God, you will never hear me shut up. I will tell every single person over the last 2 days that has acted like a freaking crybaby when it comes to Dan Campbell about, he built that culture, Jared, I'd never fire him for that. I would just, I rub their noses in it. Because to me, it's common sense. If I had to pick between the 2, I'm picking Ben Johnson. Caroline and I talked about this Sunday night after the game. And Caroline texted me, and she said that the Lions need Ben Johnson more than they need Dan Campbell. And I said in response to her, I go, this gives you Ed Orgeron, Joe Brady vibes, doesn't it? Remember, everybody loved Ed Orgeron. Yeah, we won the game and I went home and I ate a bag of chips and watched Sports Center. Ho, 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 ho. But they're not winning because of him. Now, Dan Campbell did change the culture, but they've got a good culture now. That's the whole point. Build the culture and then get out and let the genius take over. And as I said to Caroline, when she said that Detroit needs Ben Johnson probably more than they need Dan Campbell, I think that Jared Goff needs Ben Johnson more than he needs Dan Campbell. And I go back to that Atlanta Super Bowl. And this is why the owner has to know how valuable everybody in the building is and know how smart everybody is and know who does what. Because if the Atlanta Falcons could do it over again, they would have fired Dan Quinn the second they lost that game to the Patriots, and they would have made Kyle Shanahan their head coach. They would have done it immediately. And I wonder if Sheila Ford Hamp, who's apparently the one that's overseen this entire rebuild in Detroit and getting away from the days of ineptitude that the Lions have had for forever, I wonder if she's thinking, hey, we're going to do what it takes to keep Ben Johnson. So, if that means that we're going to have to, and Ben's going to have to be a part of this and fake this sham where we try to see if we can trade Dan Campbell somewhere, where we can, if worse comes to worse, fire him, and then interview some David Shaw, external minority candidate, and then make Ben Johnson. I think this story's not over. If it is as simple as Ben Johnson, for the second year in a row, has turned down the opportunity to A, be a head coach, and B, lifetime money just because he's loyal to Dan Campbell, then I will be shocked, because that doesn't make any sense to me. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of Dan Campbell, and speaking of the Lions and what they did the other day, we need to have a conversation about the A word. Any guess what the A word is, Ian?
I'm not sure I want to guess.
Analytics. Because everybody tells me I'm stupid because analytics. So let's take a deeper dive. We'll do that next. And we should do that because your coach, Brian Callahan, says that he actually values them. So we will do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
How much of this collapse are you putting on Dan Campbell and the coaching?
Yeah, very little. Let's be clear, though, this is a disastrous collapse for Detroit. To be up 14-0, to be up 24-7, and to lose in that way, disaster. I put very little on Dan Campbell. Everyone's talking about kicking field goals and whatnot. 4th and 2, they throw the ball to Josh Reynolds. He drops it. Then we come back, and then there's going to be a drop on 3rd down by Josh Reynolds in the 3rd quarter. And then there's the fumble by Gibbs in the 3rd quarter. All led to 17 points. Dan Campbell not kicking field goals doesn't lead to those 2 drops. Dan Campbell not kicking field goals doesn't lead to that Gibbs fumble.
You got a 24-7 lead at halftime. You do not have an excuse to lose that game and to get blitzed in the 3rd quarter the way that you did. I mean, not only was the game tied, the game was tied by the end of the 3rd quarter. Tied by the end of the 3rd quarter. And ultimately, you ended up scoring 27 unanswered points before you put up something. I'm sorry. I got to look at the coach there, and I got to say, yo, man, this was not your shining moment.
I remember when I was in Denver and being one of the leaders, every time we left the locker room during a playoff game, I would always tell the guys, don't you be the one. Don't you be the one that get a penalty that cost us. Don't you be the one that fumble the football that cost us. Coach, don't you be the one to try to be the smartest man that ever played to coach the game. Take those points.
There you go. That was first take yesterday. I know Dan Orlovsky's, oh no, if Josh Reynolds had caught the ball, it would have been different. Why are you putting all your eggs in Josh Reynolds' basket? PK this morning. If he had caught the ball, right, well, maybe we shouldn't put our entire season in the hands of Josh Reynolds. Just a suggestion from me. Josh texts in, by the way, and says, Ben Johnson is waiting for Dan Campbell to be fired, and he's taking over as head coach. That's what I think. That's what I think. I think Ben Johnson knows that Dan Campbell, I think there's a legitimate chance that the people that are in charge with the Lions saw the stupidity that we saw on Sunday, and they feel probably even stronger than I do about the Lions, because what do I care about the city of Detroit and that they didn't get in? I was just mad that this guy ruined it for all of them. And maybe they're mad too. And they're like, well, if we lose Ben Johnson, we're going to stink. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to see if the Commanders or the Seahawks want to trade for Dan Campbell. We'll call around the league. If any other team wants to trade for Dan Campbell, they can let us know. Then we're going to sit down with Dan Campbell and we're going to say, here's your options. Your options are either you accept a trade to this team or we're going to fire you. What would you rather have? And then they promote Ben Johnson. And I don't know if it's that cut and dry or whatever. But here's the conversation we need to have with the analytic people. Because everybody keeps defending the stupidity of Dan Campbell on Sunday with that one word. We're going to call it the A word. Analytics. Analytics, it feels like in football, has kind of become the green light to do something stupid. Well, we decided to do that. Why? Analytics. Because when you decide to do something stupid and you blame it on analytics, it's not your fault that it didn't work out. It's analytics' fault that it didn't work out. Well, analytics say it's supposed to work, so darn. Whereas if it's your decision and it doesn't work out, everybody is pointing the finger at you. But here's what I don't get about Dan Campbell and analytics. All these egghead gurus that believe in the analytics, like Greg Olson, who won't shut up on television, they're saying Dan Campbell's right because he goes with analytics. Except that in the first half, at the 3-yard line, facing a 4th down, the Detroit Lions decided to kick a field goal. In fact, if you remember it, they're up by 14 points. They're right there with, I think, 15 seconds or so left. It's 4th and goal from the 3. And Campbell stands there, and he looks for a second. The offense is on the field. And then Campbell, who was on TV, puts both arms up and says field goal. Except that that's actually anti-analytics. According to the analytic 4th down bot on Twitter, which I have found, Ian, I didn't even know this thing existed.
Me either.
apparently, according to the analytic fourth down bot, the analytic recommendation, according to this on Twitter, is a strong go for it. The win probability up by 14, 4th and 3, 3 yards from your opponent's end zone with 7 seconds to go gives you an 84% chance if you go for it to win and a 79% chance if you kick the field goal. So why did Dummy kick the field goal then? Now, I was watching the game on TV. I don't subscribe to the analytic bot tell me what to do everything, but I was watching the game on TV and I said, kick! Go up by 3 possessions going into halftime. The last thing you want to do is screw this up, give San Francisco the momentum. San Francisco comes out of the locker room, scores a touchdown. Now it's a 7-point game. Give yourself the buffer of the third possession, kick the field goal, go up 17, and say, all right, guys, we just got to keep our foot on the gas and go into the second half. And that's probably what Hamburger Head on the sidelines for the Lions thought at the time. So then when he ends up in almost the exact same spot, except there you're 3 yards from the end zone. So if you're telling me that you want to go for it because you value the 4 extra points that you might get over the 3 points that you are almost certain to get, at least I know right there you're 3 yards away from it. In this case, if you get the first down when they went for it and Reynolds dropped it and it, started the cascade down the toilet bowl of the Detroit Lions' only chance to ever make it to the Super Bowl, if you get that, there's no guarantee that you're going to score a touchdown. You might peter out right then and there and have to kick a field goal. So congratulations, you killed an extra minute off the clock, but you didn't really do anything, and you're still kicking a field goal to go up 3 possessions, which is the long-winded way of saying you eggheads are wrong. Dan Campbell's not going off of analytics. You guys are telling me it's analytics, and so I'm the idiot because I think you're a moron to not kick that field goal, and you're saying, no, the analytics say you're supposed to do it. They're operating on the analytics. They know what they're talking about. He didn't do it before halftime. That's not what happened. If this were an analytic team and we were analytics, we'd have gone for it on 4th down, and they didn't. And what that tells me is that Dan Campbell, and there's 2 sides to this. What it tells me is, A, Dan Campbell's not riding with analytics, folks. Dan Campbell is riding with his identity of aggressiveness, which is also an identity of recklessness. I don't like that. That's the problem, is that when you live by the moron, you die by the moron. So all year, it's like, we're going to be aggressive. Okay, here you go. Game on the line, Super Bowl on the line. And it's like, oh, we did something stupid. So you analytic guys, you guys are trying to tell me that I'm stupid for all the dumb stuff the Lions did. And I'm telling you, it's not analytics that's running that team, because he would have gone for it right there before halftime if he was solely based on the analytics. Again, what this is Dan Campbell's identity overcame the fail-safe device of what is reckless and what's not. And that's why I'd fire his ass. And everybody says I'm crazy, and everybody says I'm over my skis. You're telling me Ben Johnson is choosing to stay there because he's not going to be the head coach of the Lions? You're telling me he's choosing to stay there and make about $2 million for the next 2 years, as opposed to making 10, 11, 12 million bucks for the next 5 years. Dave Canales, I think, got a 5-year contract. You're telling me that he's choosing to do this just because, let's get the band together. I have never met a politician who said, you know what, I think I'm good as vice president. I'd rather not be president. Well, the vice president's fine for me. Come on now. And so you analytic people are trying to take this big, you're trying to finger wag all of us about how, analytics. And I'm telling you, this wasn't analytics on Sunday. If you want to argue that it's analytics, first of all, I feel like analytics always says go for it. But if you want to argue analytics, that's fine. But then what happened before the half? That's not analytics. But anytime somebody goes for it on TV, they say analytics, finger wag. It's analytics, Jared. You don't understand analytics. And then all of a sudden we look back at the other decision that was the right decision, that made sense, that worked out for them, and then the analytics said don't do that. So that's not what's happening here. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And we still do have to get into the whole analytic, like what does all that, like what does it mean? So I do want to do that. But I also want to get to your phones, and you guys got to hear what Mad Dog Russo had to say about the Lions game. I mean, this was an all-timer for Mad Dog Russo. And we will do that next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
3rd and goal.
Yeah, the problem right now for Ben Johnson is you're on the 1.5-yard line. You'd love to run the ball, but down here with all these bodies, if you get tackled short, by the time they peel everybody off the pile to preserve your 3 timeouts, you'd let a ton of clock run down.
Well, they brought Montgomery in, and maybe they do it anyway.
And if you run it, you got to score. They did not go big people. They got 3 wide receivers on the field.
They give it to Montgomery. He is swarmed.
That's the problem with running it down there, and now they got to take a timeout. So now you've made.
Now they have to kick an onside kick.
Now you have to get the onside kick, or the game's over.
There you go, Greg Olson, the greatest broadcaster who ever lived, according to Twitter, who, by the way, doesn't even know that it's onside kick and not onsides kick. But what a moronic play by the Lions right there. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. By the way, Bob texts in and says, I was going to say firing or trading Dan Campbell was Jared's stupidest take ever, but I don't want to be as wrong as he is. Please, Joe or Paul, and there's a really good chance either or both are listening to the show right now, since I think Paul listens to this program a lot. Please remind me of something stupider he has said. I just say this. Ben Johnson is not staying out of the goodness of his heart. There's something extra to this. I don't know what it is. But Mad Dog Russo was on his SiriusXM Mad Dog Unleashed show yesterday, and he went off. Go ahead.
If you are a Lions fan, you tell me right now, for the next month, when they get this game played and everything else, the month of February, what are you going to be thinking about? Beat Baker Mayfield or the fact you had the Niners dead to rights? My God almighty! Pay attention, Campbell! Jesus, I mean, this is ridiculous. And I know we like you, Dan. You're a nice guy. You represent the city of Detroit. Blue collar. Tough. Oh, we get all the nonsense. But manage the game properly. You have a chair. I understand it's a long field goal, 2 40-yarders, but your kicker's good. You got a chance to go back up by 3 scores, and you go for it on 4th down, and then all the dopes on Twitter are backing you up. The data freaks who wouldn't know Lombardi for Paul Brown. Never heard of Otto Graham. Kenny Stabler. Madden. Wouldn't know him if they fell on him. They do football via math. That's not how you do football. Oh, my God, what a loss.
That's not how you do football. You don't do football with math. Let me say this. I'm on Dog's side. And I wonder this, right? So I was texting Joe yesterday. Joe, Lions fan, it's his team, whatever. And I said, I think they should fire Dan Campbell and make Ben Johnson the head coach. And Joe was like, they can't do that. My brother and I were texting each other about that. Like, they can't do that, which means that it's being discussed.
His Detroit fans, they want that. Some do, yeah.
It's being discussed. I think it's being discussed there. I think it's being, and it would not surprise me because this Sheila Ford Hamp, she seems to be kind of smart. It would not surprise me if she is as angry as Mad Dog is and as I am and as a lot of other people are about what happened, and that if you don't think Dan Campbell should be fired, you'll say that that's an overreaction. But because they have the in-house candidate right there who might be a better coach than Dan Campbell anyways, it wouldn't surprise me if the way that Mad Dog felt is the way that the people that run that team felt. It would not surprise me of that. And I got one other thing to add before we get back to your phones. I got one other thing to add, which is all I keep hearing about, and Titan fans should take this personally, like you should feel this as a Titans fan, is you think you're going to fire Dan Campbell, the first coach to have you within the NFC Championship game in the last 30 years? And it's almost like it's a finger wag of know your place, Detroit. But if this were the Dallas Cowboys and Mike McCarthy had screwed up the NFC Championship, Super Bowl in his hand, and screwed up the NFC Championship as bad as Dan Campbell did Sunday, every single person in America would be screaming for Mike McCarthy to be fired. It would be so loud that not even Jerry could hide from it. Like, Jerry would have to do something. Because we know how desperate the Cowboys are for the Super Bowl. We know how desperate their fans are. And we know that, quite frankly, for the last 30 years, they haven't been particularly close. So why are Dallas Cowboy fans allowed to feel that way, but Detroit Lion fans aren't allowed to feel that way? And as a Titan fan, you should feel this, because that's how you're talked to. Titans fans think they can do better than Mike Vrabel. I mean, come on, Titans fans. Learn your place. Dude, they won 7 games last year, or 2 years ago. They won 6 games last year. Mike Vrabel is not, as Mad Dog would say, Lombardi or Paul Brown or Madden or any of these other great Hall of Fame coaches. He's not. But every time that came up, it's like we got talked down to, if you're Tennessee, you shouldn't expect to do better than Mike Vrabel. And when it comes to Detroit, it's like, you're Detroit. You shouldn't expect to do better than the NFC Championship game. Well, the Dallas Cowboys don't ever win anything. The last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl, I was 5 years old. Like, they haven't won anything in 30 years. So how long does it go? I mean, most of America was on board with firing Mike McCarthy after that playoff debacle. And Dak Prescott just had his best season ever. So we're allowed to talk about it with Dallas. But we're not allowed to talk about it with Detroit. Because even though Dallas doesn't win anything anymore, we are supposed to remember the history of America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Like Tom Landry. We're supposed to remember that, and Detroit is not supposed to win, so when they kind of win a little bit, we should say, shrug and say, well, be happy with what you got. That's how you treat Titan fans. Same thing. 615-737-1025 here on the program, 615-737-1025. Caleb in Gallatin says, if they fire Dan Campbell, then they're taking a page out of the Titans book. Firing a coach that got you to the playoffs, in Detroit's case, the NFC Championship game. I don't think Mike Mularkey is why you lost to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the divisional round of the playoffs in 2018. I could be wrong, but I don't think he is. I don't think you had the talent to go up against that Patriot team. I feel very confident in saying that. 35-14, which was the final score of that game, I believe is indicative of the difference between the two teams. The Detroit Lions are not in the Super Bowl because of Dan Campbell. There is a massive difference when it comes to that. Joel says Seattle didn't fire Pete Carroll when he threw it instead of running it to lose a Super Bowl. Guess what? Pete Carroll won the one the year before. There is a difference there. Had Grady Little won the World Series the year before he kept Pedro Martinez in the game, probably would have been a little different. Had Doug Collins won the NBA Finals the year before they lost to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Final, probably would have been a little different. But they didn't. And had Pete Carroll not won that Super Bowl and had not been to the Super Bowl the year before, there is a chance that that mistake could have landed him out of work very quickly. Maybe not right after it happened, but it could happen. Texter says, so if Dan Campbell takes another team to the NFC Championship game, you're going to say it's because of the OC. I can't tell you what I'm going to say if something happens. You guys love to do this. You are setting this up so that when this happens, you can say, and I'm like, I have no idea what I will say when it happens. I mean, I'll tell you this, swear to God. Last week, Ian, did I not say all last week in my FanDuel ads that Detroit was going to lose?
Pretty much, yep.
I mean, I kept saying that all last week. I did not think that I'd be on the air this week saying they should fire Dan Campbell. So I can't tell you what I'm going to think when something happens that hasn't happened. Unbelievable. One texter says the league is pushing analytics because the analytics say to always pass and always go for it on fourth down. Jared, did you know that analytics people don't believe in momentum? It's clear they've never played the game. So I have heard some of that analytic people don't believe in, that they don't believe in momentum. I don't know what one of my big issues with analytics is that they don't really tell you like what's the scope of what that model is actually telling you, right? So it's like, so are you telling me that, like what's the rationale behind how we got here? And it can't be that it's too complicated for me to understand. They just don't tell you. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. More of your phones. Plus, there was an offensive coordinator hire that I think might be telling for a future Titan quarterback. We'll get to that in your phones. I said future? Previous Titan quarterback. Excuse me. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, let's talk about your windows. That's right, Window Nation, they're the best. Online at windownation.com. If you've had enough of your windows keeping that house chilly, and where this will really screw you up is when you've got a faulty window in one room, and in that room it's ice cold, and then the rest of the house you've got the heat on, and so you're burning up because you have to crank the heat up because when you want to go to bed, it's cold, so you crank the heat up, then you wake up, then you're sweating. It's awful. And that's usually because a draft's coming in with that bad window. Well, let the pros at Window Nation take great care of your home. That's right, Window Nation. And getting those new windows, it's more affordable than you think. It's easier than you think, and it will put value back into your home. Let Window Nation take care of it for you, because Window Nation right now has no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. So replacing them is easier and more affordable than most people think. Do not wait. Simply call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, that's no interest for 5 years, 50% off all window styles. 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
And America wanted Detroit to win. We've seen this game before. Nobody wanted the Niners to win outside of the Bay Area. And half the place was Detroit fans anyway. My God. You're that desperate to get your money back with the season ticket prices? It was Honolulu blue in that building. But goodness gracious, nobody wants to see We've seen San Francisco, Kansas City. And what happened after that? A 2-year pandemic. 2 months later. I don't want to see that game again. I wanted Lions in there. And Campbell screwed it up. Somewhere upstairs. Lombardi, say to the good Lord, don't they ever learn? Vince, they don't.
Mad Dog Russo, boy, he was on one about Dan Campbell, which I like. And we should be, by the way, getting Mad Dog on the radio show at the Super Bowl, Ian.
Oh, I can't wait. That would be great.
We should be having Mad Dog on. I was talking with some people about that over at Mad Dog the other day. So we shall see. Jeff is a Lions fan. He's up next here on the program. Jeff, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, I've got about 3 points, and so if you'll let me get through them, I appreciate it.
If your first point is good, I may cut you off because I want to react to it. If not, rifle through them. Give me 3 right away. Go.
So first of all, Greg Olson didn't talk about analytics. He talked about that's his aggressive style. And so I do want to correct that a little bit. I think maybe the graphics went up at the same time because I obviously watched the game. So that was the first thing. Second thing is that I have never liked the aggressive style of Dan Campbell. I think that he puts his team in jeopardy. And I thought that when he eschewed the short field goal that would have put them up 3 scores, and they should have done that. Third thing is, I think that letting Dan Campbell go right now, I think that Ben Johnson never gets the locker room. We talk about coaches losing the locker room. He owns that locker room. That locker room believes in him. The players came out after the loss and said, yes, I back my coach. We should have done what we did. I don't agree with it, but I think that Ben Johnson comes in there without the locker room if that's the change that they make.
So here's where thank you for your call, Jeff. First off, on the TV broadcast, I felt like Olsen was hammering the analytics. I don't know if he was or wasn't. He was on Twitter. So on Twitter after the fact, he was talking about analytics say this. Secondly, I forgot the second point. Oh, yeah, that he can't stand the aggressive style that Campbell plays. I mean, again, there's a difference between aggressive driving and stupid driving. Stupid driving is, it's a red light, I'll go anyways. Aggressive driving is, I think I can get past that yellow just in time before it goes red. Let me and go right through it. There is a difference between the two. Dan Campbell borders on stupid. I mean, the one that still stands out to me was how stupid it was for him. They, when they run that play where the lineman reports eligible and the referee screwed it up against the Cowboys and they end up converting and then they end up taking that off the board and calling a penalty. Well, as much as I think the Lions got screwed on that call, at that point, now it's a 2-point conversion from the 7-yard line. It's like, all right, go kick and let's go to overtime. And he went for it. I'm like, dude, you're at the 7. And so he is stupid. The third thing he said was what? Losing the locker room? So here's the thing. First of all, players always, unless they hate the coach, like Urban Meyer with the Jags, for the most part, players come out and always defend the coach. I remember when the Titans players were defending the coach over the whole Mike Mularkey thing. The Titans players here were defending the coach a month ago. They get over it. And it'd be one thing if you do it in the middle of the season, where you can kind of lose faith of direction and everything else. But when you fire somebody at the end of the year, I mean, those players, they're not even going to meet up again until April. That's a lot of water under the bridge. So I wouldn't worry about that. Plus, I think Detroit probably is going to try to trade him. I mean, I think, Ian, what % chance would you give that Ben Johnson is the head coach of the Detroit Lions at kickoff week 1 next year?
10.
I'm going to go with 33. What % chance would you give it that Ben Johnson is the head coach of the Lions in 2 years?
I'll go to your 33 or 25.
I
25
think
or 33, go up a little bit.
I
Yeah.
think it's really I definitely think it's trending in that direction.
Yeah. I don't know about, next season right off the bat, That'd be wild, though. They just fire Dan Campbell and just elevate Ben Johnson and keep him from leaving and taking another job.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Texture says, I agree with you, Jared. People who do dumb stuff are usually bozos and they don't learn from their mistakes. Culture is not everything when you do dumb stuff. Agreed. Like the whole culture thing that Dan Campbell, I think that's real. I think that those guys, Ian and I were talking about this during a break. I think that Chris Sanders is like Dan Campbell. That having Dan Campbell as your head coach is like having Chris Sanders. Because every single person in the world loves Chris Sanders. And if you played on a team that was coached by Chris Sanders, I cannot imagine you not wanting to give 110% every game because you want to reward your coach because of the faith your coach, in this case Chris Sanders, has in you and the kind of guy that your coach is. Now, I love Chris with all my heart, but you've listened to some of these pregame shows. He says crazy stuff. And that's Dan Campbell. Former player, former good player, just like Chris Sanders. One of the most rallying people, nicest guys, cares to the core. That's Chris Sanders. Does crazy things. In Chris's case, says them on the radio. Like the coin toss being the most important part of the game. That's Chris Sanders. And that's how, Campbell, he's gotten that culture that way. But culture alone only gets you so, it can get you, but at some point, Dan Campbell's got to coach that game the right way. At some point, or else you're never going to win a Super Bowl doing that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Do you think Chris will take that as a compliment, or do you think he'll take that as a knock that we're comparing him to Dan Campbell?
Hopefully a compliment.
I hope he takes it as a compliment, too. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. I still never got to the whole analytics, the question I have about the A word that is analytics in the NFL. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Thanks to Ian. Live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on the program. So, Ian, we got to talk about the A word.
Oh, boy.
Analytics.
Oh, okay, not too bad.
Do you remember a 2021 game? The Titans beat the Bills here at Nissan Stadium on Monday Night Football, and the game-defining play was a Josh Allen quarterback sneak on fourth down. They could have kicked the field goal to tie the game. Instead, Josh Allen tries to sneak the ball on fourth down, and he doesn't get it.
He
Either
slipped.
fell, or Jeffrey Simmons blew it up, or something like that. And that whole next day, we were at Bridgestone Arena, and everybody was talking about, well, the analytics say to go for it. And I just kept, and I was kind of rude. Poor Caroline. I just kept going, ha, 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 analytics. It's like, oh, well, the analytics say, so if the analytics say, then we have to, ha, ha, analytics. So one of the big things that at least was expressed to me about Mike Vrabel's firing was that Mike Vrabel did not embrace analytics. And I was supposed to be somebody that thinks that that's a big deal. And maybe it is. I don't know. Your new coach, Brian Callahan, was hired last week, and last week he was asked about analytics.
Analytics, I think that it's a term that's a broad stroke term, but there's a lot of details that go into it, a lot of different ways it fits. At the end of the day, you're using hard, concrete data to help inform decision making, and that's great. The more smart people, the more information that you're given, the better decisions you can make. And so that's always going to be a part moving forward. I believe in that information. I believe in that data. And again, the game management part, the statistical analysis, all those things play a huge role in how we're going to build our organization, and they're important and it matters. So I believe in it.
He believes in analytics. So here's my thing with analytics. They're not nothing, right? It is important to have information. What they're trying to do is they're trying to take, again, expected outcomes, plug them into the model, and it's supposed to give you kind of a numerical value on what you should do. Now, he stopped short there of saying, we're all in on analytics. But, and I do believe his bosses want to hear this, he's going to embrace it. I don't have a problem with that. Here's what I don't like about analytics. I don't like the lack of transparency with which we're supposed to accept them, if that makes any sense. This isn't like a prescription, right? I go to the doctor. In fact, I'll be honest, I take anxiety medication, right? I don't know how it works in my brain that it's got, this blocker here and then this goes there, and the doctor explained it to me. I don't know how it works. I can look it up and it'll look like a chemistry thing, and I don't know how that works. But I accept what the doctor is telling me. And then the doctor says what the outcome is supposed to be. Makes sense to me. Okay. But when it comes to football, every time somebody goes for it, they tell us on TV or on the internet that, the analytics say. Every time. Can somebody explain to me what the analytics says? Why does it say that? For instance, if we're looking at a model that tells us on this 4th and 3 specifically, we need to go for it. Is it factoring in the fact that we're on the road? I don't know. Is it factoring in the fact that Will Levis has a bruised elbow and he's out and Mac Jones is in as the backup quarterback? I don't know. Does it factor in the momentum of the fact that you're about to put this team away, and that if you put that ball in the end zone, this game is over, but if you kick a field goal, it becomes an 8-point lead, and now they get a shot? Does it factor that in? Somebody tell me, what does it factor in? Does it factor in that it's raining? Does it factor in that it's not raining? So I just don't understand what happens of how you use those tools to make the football decisions. And so if Brian Callahan, and I'm using him as the example because he's the local guy here, and he says that he cares about analytics, if Brian Callahan says, we're going to make decisions based on analytics, well, then when you make a decision, you need to explain it to me. I watched a Football Life documentary last week on Bill Belichick. And what it is it goes behind the scenes of the 2009 New England Patriots, which there's a lot of Floyd in that Football Life, including him talking to Robert Kraft about negotiating Vince Wilfork's contract. But in one of the games, Belichick goes for it on his own side of the 50 on 4th and 2 against the Falcons, and they get it. And it showed Bill in the meeting with the coaches saying, we need to try this. So if he's on the sidelines, or whatever, and he's talking about, we need to do this so that if we get in a game where we need to have it, I need to know if I can trust these guys if they can get it. 4th and 2 against the Falcons, they convert. Couple months later, they're playing the Colts. Sunday Night Football, New England, Indianapolis. It's a 6-point game in the fourth quarter with about 2 minutes to go. It's 4th and 2. Belichick leaves the offense on the field. They come off the field on 4th and 2. Bill calls timeout, and he leaves the offense on the field. And Bill says to Brady, standing there right there on the field, he goes, if it's a good look, take it. If not, if you don't like what you see, delay a game and we'll punt. Brady goes out there. He throws the ball to Kevin Falk, his running back, who gets tackled short of the sticks. Colts take over, plus side of the field. Manning into the end zone, touchdown. Belichick explains it, in the documentary, saying, I did not want Peyton Manning to have the football. Belichick gets up in front of the team, and he says, there's going to be a lot of things said about me, and some of you are probably already saying them, but the one thing you can't say about me is that I'm scared, because I'm not. And we will not play scared here. But again, the whole reason for why Belichick did that, forget about analytics for a second. The whole reason Belichick did that is because he thought we've got a better chance at getting 2 yards on one play and winning the game than we do of punting to Peyton Manning and putting Peyton Manning on the field. Was Bill wrong about that? We'll never know, because we don't know that if Manning had gotten the ball, he'd go down the field, score a touchdown. But at least I understand what he's thinking. That doesn't mean I agree with it, but at least I understand it. When it comes to analytics making these decisions in games, I'm looking at the play right before halftime for the Lions and the 49ers. The analytics on Twitter say go for it. 4th and 3 from the 3 in a 14-point game right before halftime. Now, I can't imagine that the analytics are factoring in the momentum swing that San Francisco would receive if they stop Detroit short of the goal line and go into the locker room with a 14-point deficit and getting the ball back to start the second half, as compared to going into the locker room down by 3 scores. So when Dan Campbell decided to kick the ball there, it made sense to me, even though, again, the analytic models on Twitter say don't do it. I understand why those analytic models are saying don't do it, but I'm factoring in all of the extra stuff, the momentum. Well, when we go back to that next one, and he decides to go for it and doesn't want the 3-possession lead, the people on TV say that we need to shut up because analytics say that this is the right reason to do that. Well, if a coach makes a decision based upon analytics, help me explain how it is that the analytics told you to go for it. If the analytics on a certain play say, you know what, the analytics strongly say you go for it. If you go for this, you've got a 93% chance to win. If you don't go for this, you've got a 65% chance to win. Fine. That makes sense. Get up to the podium after the game. If you say, Coach, that decision to punt the ball, why? Well, the analytics said we had Johnny up there. He's a 8-time Harvard graduate who also went to Princeton, and he said that if we go for it, then it'll give us a 55% chance of winning, but if we punt, it'll give us a 75% chance of winning. I can get on board with that. But nobody ever does that. And I'm trying to figure out why. Like, why does it have to be such a secret? And that's what I don't like. That's what bothers me about all of this, is the talking down to about you guys don't understand analytics. You guys are stupid. You guys don't understand math. You guys don't. Trust me. I know math. I graduated from college, and I am smart enough to know that I ain't the best math student in the world. But what I don't understand, again, is what do these models tell us? What do these models not tell us? Again, does the model factor in that you're playing Brock Purdy? Because decision-making for me is different. If it is Malik Willis or if it is Patrick Mahomes, it's different. But I don't know that. But Greg Olson doesn't tell me that. Dan Orlovsky doesn't tell me that. Mina Kimes doesn't tell me that. All they do is they just look at me, wag their finger, and say, analytics, you're stupid to understand what this means. All I know is the Chargers hired an analytics guru to be their coach, and he was an idiot. They didn't win any football games. But now you want me to blindly trust this because some schmo at Harvard says I have to? I'll trust it if you explain it to me. I'll trust it if you give me a reason to understand it. But we don't do that in football. Again, Brian Callahan says he's going to operate with analytics. I mean, that's great. But if you draft somebody and they suck and you drafted them because of the analytics, you better tell me what those analytics were, or else I can't trust anything that you do. So somebody help me on this. 615-737-1025. I see your phones. We're to them next on this. A lot of people want to get in on the A word, analytics. 615-737-1025. Let's talk about White Bison. That's right. White Bison is your local coffee shop this winter when it is cold outside. Stay warm and cozy with the new honey-based drinks, cinnamon beehive latte, iced honey nut macchiato, vanilla rooibos tea latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. So, be sure to check that out. Download the app and order ahead. When you download the Twice Daily White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program, and you can place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn rewards on every purchase. Download the app to order ahead, earn rewards, and get one free coffee every time you buy 7. Part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. That's White Bison and Twice Daily, fresh all day.
If you are a Lions fan, you tell me right now, for the next month, when they get this game played and everything else, the month of February, what are you going to be thinking about? Beat Baker Mayfield or the fact you had the Niners dead to rights? My God almighty! Pay attention, Campbell! Jesus, I mean, this is ridiculous. And I know we like you, Dan. You're a nice guy. You represent the city of Detroit. Blue collar. Tough. Oh, we get all the nonsense. But manage the game properly. You have a chair. I understand it's a long field goal, 2 40-yarders, but your kicker's good. You got a chance to go back up by 3 scores, and you go for it on 4th down, and then all the dopes on Twitter are backing you up. The data freaks who wouldn't know Lombardi for Paul Brown. Never heard of Otto Graham. Kenny Stabler. Madden. Wouldn't know him if they fell on him. They do football via math. That's not how you do football. Oh, my God, what a loss.
Mad Dog Russo. See, that's why I'm on that channel. Ellie is up next. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ellie, go ahead.
Anyone who says that analytics support to do it is an idiot. You have an over 80% chance of getting up to 3 scores. You have maybe a 60-something% chance of getting the first down. And you then have a 50% chance of getting a touchdown, possibly, if you're going for that. You're going to have less than a 33% chance of getting a touchdown. And guess what? You're only going to be up 3 scores. You have much less of a chance of going up 3 scores by 3 points, then it's worth going up. And otherwise, it's not. There's macro analytics, micro analytics. They look at the micro, not the macro, not the big picture. Whoever says they shouldn't go for it is an idiot. They should be fired. And if anyone on the team said to go for it, should be fired. Look at the big picture, not the small picture. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, but see, all of that, like, I agree with, but then they'll say the analytics didn't say that. And then, like, a lot of you have texted in about analytics, and you say that, look, analytics, and I'm basically paraphrasing what a lot of you have said into the text line, analytics are a guide that are to be used by the coach. It's not the end-all, be-all. The coach has to coach. The coach has to make decisions with how they coach. But then why was a big sticking point with Mike Vrabel and the Titans that Mike Vrabel didn't embrace analytics? For instance, the Dolphins game. According to The Athletic, Vrabel goes for 2 at the end of the game. They end up making it a 6-point game. They get the ball back. They score a touchdown. They kick the extra point. They win. And according to The Athletic, somebody in the Titans analytics department didn't like that. Well, if a big hang-up between Vrabel and the Titans was analytics, and the analytics department is mad about a decision Vrabel made, then doesn't that mean that what you're saying is that the analytics department should be the end-all, be-all here? You see the mixed message I'm talking about? If you want to tell me that, hey, the numbers say that there's not much of a difference between this, or the numbers say you are a freaking moron, Jared, it's like, okay, those are 2 different things. If you're saying that the difference is a slight advantage here, it's a 5% difference here, but I feel in my heart like I don't want Mahomes to have the ball back, then I'm going to make the decision about how to make sure Mahomes doesn't get that ball back. If you're telling me the difference in the analytic model is 80%, we may have to listen to the models. But I couldn't tell you that. So I don't know this is true. I knew that it was unlikely that Brian Callahan was going to go to the Senior Bowl. Somebody texted and said, Jared, before the end of the show, give us your thoughts on the team sending Chad Brinker alone to the Senior Bowl. That is way outside of the scope of his duties, according to the new power structure. So Rand Carthon's not going. I don't know if that's true or not. I just want to say I don't know if that's true.
I've not heard that.
But Chad Brinker is involved in scouting. That was part of his responsibilities that they laid out there, and the Senior Bowl would be scouting. I don't care if Brian Callahan doesn't go to the Senior Bowl. I got a problem if Rand Carthon doesn't go to the Senior Bowl. And again, I don't know if he's not going. I don't want to accuse him of that. Every time I talk about Rand, everybody gets all mad all the time and everything else. But, I mean, he's got to be at the Senior Bowl. I'm going to find out if he's not at the Senior Bowl. Because somebody texted in and said Chad Brinker was the only one, and I cannot believe
that's true. We might
true.
have to reach out to somebody down there.
We have to do a little checking.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine that Rand Carthon is not at the Senior Bowl.
Maybe he's too busy helping with the coaching staff kind of hire. No?
I need the coach to be in charge of the coaching staff hires. I need the personnel guy who's got final say on the roster talking to these young players that they may put on this football team. I'm sorry. That you go to the Senior Bowl. But I'm again, I don't want to say that guy's for sure wrong because I don't know. But I'm serious. I can't imagine that that's the case. That just Chad Brinker is representing the Titans at the Senior Bowl. That would be wild. Now, it probably would bode well for Terrell Williams if that's the case because he's coaching one of these teams. And, again, maybe he stays. I don't know. We'll get confirmation on that because we don't know. Trevor will. Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app, and happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's right. We can say Super Bowl. We don't have to say big game. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch and grabbing your favorite football snacks and placing some super bets. Boy, I tell you, I'm not picking against Mahomes. You guys do whatever you want. But nothing he would do would surprise me at all anymore. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. And make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. It is Tuesday, which means it's time for our weekly visit with Trevor Maddich, ESPN, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trev, I want your opinion, because not only do I know you watch a game Sunday, not only do I know you're a football guy, not only do I know that you do care about analytics and the numbers and the new wave of the future, but I also know that you're a former Detroit Lion great. So, Trevor Maddich, your reaction to all the stupidity that we saw from the Detroit Lions on Sunday, and if you think it is the right call because of the numbers, or do you think that we saw some serious coaching malpractice Sunday that cost Detroit a Super Bowl?
Well, I don't know about Detroit Lion great, but I did look great in Honolulu blue. So at least we can compromise there.
There you go.
I thought that Coach Campbell did what he had to do. You know, you talk about that 4th and goal at the 3 at the end of the first half. And instead of going for the touchdown, he went for the field goal. The problem is there were just a few seconds to go. And I think part of the calculus for a coach in that moment is that if you fail to get it, then you've got the other team backed up. Now you can hold them back there and make them punt out of their own end zone. Now you get a short field and you can try it again. When you do it backed up against halftime, that part of the calculus for the coach is taken away. And now it's just go for the touchdown or go for the field goal, which is as close to a sure thing as there is in the NFL kicking game. So I do not mind at all that they went for the field goal at the end of the first half. And then looking at the 2 4th downs that he went for it in the second half, one in the third quarter, one in the fourth quarter. You know, I'm not sure. I think I need more information before I can get mad at him about that. And, you know, one of them was a 4th and 2, I think, on the 28 going in, and the other was like a 4th and 3 on the 30 going in. So why did he go for it? Well, look at the kicker. The kicker did not kick long field goals this year. Michael Badgley, he had 7 field goals between regular season and postseason. He made them all. The longest one was 54 yards. Mm-hmm. But other than that, he didn't even attempt one that was more than 41 yards. And the thing is, the Lions punter kicked off in this game.
Sure.
The Lions punter was the kickoff guy.
I mean, we know Badgley sucks because he was on the Titans and he sucks.
Sure. But the thing is, as I'm thinking from Campbell's perspective, considering that he only attempted 1 field goal over 41 yards, that on the 28-yard line where they went for that first 4th down, that would have been a 45-yard field goal. The other one from the 30 would have been a 47-yard field goal. And my thought is that he thought he was better off having the ball in the hands of his offensive stars than to let Badgley try to kick a field goal that either one of them would have been longer than every one of his attempts except for one on the season. And they didn't trust him to kick off anyway, because his leg wasn't strong enough, either because it's not strong or because he had an injury that we don't know about. So I think there's more things going on besides just, gee, should I kick a field goal or should I not in those situations from the 28 and the 30, because this is a field goal kicker that clearly Campbell did not trust to kick the ball very far.
Trevor, do you think that that was a statement game for Lamar Jackson's career, that he may never be able to get over the elite quarterbacks?
I think it could be. It very well could be. You know, I when he took off running, for example, I kept on hearing the announcers light up and say, there he goes, he's so hard to catch. But if you had the sound down, you'd think he was a relatively decently mobile quarterback. So I don't know if he was banged up, but, you know, you and I saw him at Louisville and then early in his Ravens career. And when he took off running, your eyes got big and you didn't dare look away from the screen because it was electrifying. He wasn't electrifying as a runner. So he's improved as a passer, and that's where I think his MVP status arises. But in this game, while he had passes dropped, while Zay Flowers, for goodness sake, getting that ball knocked away just before he crossed the goal line because he reached out unnecessarily.
Stupid.
Horrible move by Flowers, just terrible. He also threw some bad passes, short passes that should have been caught and should have been yards, and he just missed. And then he threw that bad interception in the end zone where he threw the ball into literally triple coverage, and he threw it relatively flat. That ball, if he even attempted to throw it, should have been up in the air and dropped so it would have landed out of bounds. so that only his receiver would have a chance to kind of reach out there with his toes in bounds to try to catch it. Instead, he throws it not on a laser, but it was relatively flat, and a defender just stepped right in front of it. It was an inexplicable decision to throw that trajectory in that moment. And I think when you add up that pass with the other misses that he made then, and even if you exclude the dropped passes and Flowers' big, massive debacle, fumbling the ball, I think you still look at Lamar Jackson and you can reasonably say that he had opportunities and he missed too many of them. And that doesn't look good for him going forward, because in the regular season, he's as good as anybody in the league right now, including Patrick Mahomes. But it's the postseason where he'll be judged.
What do you think about Mahomes after the way he's played this postseason? And not just like, yeah, he's really, really good, but like where maybe historically are you starting to feel about Mahomes?
One of the greatest ever. I don't think he's ready to surpass Brady, but he's doing Brady-like things from a mental standpoint. Really, Travis Kelce should not have been as effective the last 2 weeks as he's been. He's banged up. He's 34. You watch him pre-snap, and as Kelce shifts around the formation, he mostly walks. He just sort of moseys around. I think that's just because he can't afford to expend the energy and tax his body to the degree that he should be hustling pre-snap. And it's okay with the coaching staff, and it's okay with Mahomes. But then he goes downfield, not particularly fast, and ends up in a place where if the ball is thrown exactly at the right moment, to the right spot, depending on the defense, he'll catch it. And he did that over and over and over again the last 2 weeks. And I think that is in large measure Mahomes knowing what he can do, what he can't, knowing what the defense was doing, and knowing when to throw that ball so that it would arrive at a specific spot at a specific moment. And that is a very Tom Brady-like thing. Now, what he does that Brady could never do is move around and extend plays and do all the magic stuff. But I think Mahomes has a chance to surpass Brady. I mean, if he wins this Super Bowl, what would that be? Would that be 4 for him?
That'd be 3.
There'll be 3?
3
yeah, so
and
he's
2
got to
MVPs and 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls he's been to, which is what Brady did at the end of his Patriots run and what Jim Kelly did, but Jim Kelly didn't win any of those Super Bowls with the Bills.
And the thing is, when you look at what Mahomes might do going forward, Jared, it's, if he wins this one and gets to 3, now he's in striking distance of 6, right? And he did it this year with a very suspect wide receiving core. Very suspect. Now, he did it with the best defense he's ever had as a Chief. But at the same time, from the offensive perspective, he had to overcome a lot of deficiencies, which he did. And if they're able to restock that receiving core and make sure the O-line is good and stuff like that, there's no reason to think, as you look around the rest of the AFC, that Mahomes can't get back to the Super Bowl 4 or 5 times over the course of the rest of his career, and maybe get to the point to where we are saying that Mahomes surpassed Brady. He's not there yet, but you can see the track. And this year's Super Bowl will be important in terms of getting a leg up on that.
Trevor, where are you on Brock Purdy? I feel like there is either the mindset of, the Brock Purdy haters need to shut up, or the idea that, like, Purdy's fine, but he's not a great quarterback. Where are you on Purdy?
I am in the latter. I think Purdy has a phenomenal offensive line, incredible skill people, especially matchup nightmares for defenses. I mean, Deebo Samuel can line up anywhere, and they can always put him, based on personnel group and formation and motion and things like that, in a position where he has a matchup advantage over the guy that's likely to cover him. Same way with Christian McCaffrey, running back. You can line him up at wide receiver, slot receiver, H-back, running back, any place that you want to put him to be a matchup nightmare. Then the receivers are good as well. And so when you combine that with time to throw, it's a simple matter for the offensive brain trust of the 49ers to scheme really advantageous throws for the quarterback. And so I'm not saying that Purdy hasn't made critical throws. He has. But at the same time, I see him more as a master at distributing the ball to those skill guys with a great system that defenses just can't cover them all. And until I see the 49ers down and the running game's not working and Deebo's not there and it's got to be on the hands or in the hands of Purdy and Purdy only to elevate this team. I'm not going to put him in the same position as a Mahomes.
Trevor Maddox is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. I got some Senior Bowl and positional and draft and everything questions for Trevor with the Titans. We'll do that coming up next, including we have gotten some confirmation that Titans general manager, executive vice president / general manager, Rand Carthon is not currently at the Senior Bowl, though he may go down there some point later in the week. What? We'll get Trevor's thoughts on that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Trevor Maddich is with us, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. So somebody texted in last hour and said that, or earlier this hour, and said that Rand Carthon, the Titans general manager, is not at the Senior Bowl. He's not there. Chad Brinker, somebody told me Chad Brinker is at the Senior Bowl. We have found out that is confirmed. There could be a possibility that Rand goes down later this week, and that all the Titans scouts are at the Senior Bowl, and any interviews he misses could be done at the Combine virtually, or they could be brought into the facility. And so everybody thinks that this is the start of the process, I've been told, but that Rand has been watching college tape all fall long. Trevor, what do you make of that?
It's kind of an eye-opener, isn't it? I mean, when I heard that, I was a little bit shocked because of how many position needs, how many places on this team they need to find guys, right? And the Senior Bowl is not just about first rounders. It's about identifying guys that you can pick up later in the draft that can help you. And so watching their body language, having the look in their eye, how they respond, if they struggle on a one-on-one and then come back and the next time they just drop anchor and just tear it up in the next one, you see a competitive nature in them, right? And you see that when you're on the field and you're looking at them. The problem with the Combine is that they don't do any of that. The Combine is just all these kind of drills that you run around and get timed, run around cones and jump up and down and do all the things you do. Football is a competitive thing and you're opposed at all times. And that's the great thing about Senior Bowl practices. That's one of the reasons I was drafted in the first round. I went to the Senior Bowl and tore it up in practice, and the game was like almost boring. But I had great practices, especially in one-on-one pass protection, and that elevated my stock because people were sitting there watching me. They saw what I did. They saw how I finished, and they saw things that they would not have seen in the game because of the nature of the drills that they structure in practice at the Senior Bowl. So it kind of it surprises me that Rand Carthon is not down there to see not just what you see on tape, but to see what happens between the plays, looking at the players' eyes and how competitive they are.
Do you think that the world we live in today, because I'm just going to tell you, Trevor, Floyd Reese would be at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he loved the Senior Bowl, and he loved all that kind of stuff or whatever, but the world we live in today, do you think that this scouting process can be done virtually? Do you think that a GM, for instance, can sit in their office and watch tape and not travel during the season to go see college players play, but watch the tape and then can watch the tape of Senior Bowl practice and then go out and watch more of their tape and then go to the Combine and meet with them in person and do virtual interviews over Zoom if they need to and bring guys in and can basically do this, i.e. the work from home era that we're in now? Do you think a GM can do that in today's game?
I think absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because it's not just a matter of seeing what they do on tape. There's all those other intangibles that we talked about that will come down to the minute differences between two guys that you need to choose from in any particular draft slot, right? So it's like, do I want this guy or do I want that guy? Well, you watch him on tape and that's really good, but there may be something about this guy from a leadership standpoint that is better than that guy. There might be something about this guy from just a intensity standpoint that you could just feel come off of his body as he's out there practicing all these live reps in the Senior Bowl that you can't see when you just watch on tape. I mean, you can see a lot on tape, but you can see other things that are important also. And so I think that it's a great point, Jared, because the intangibles are critical, especially with, again, a team like the Titans that they've got their high picks, but the guys that they draft later in the draft are going to be critical. And how much those guys love football, how much they are fighters, how fast they go between drills. Do they run? Do they jog? Do they shuffle? What do they do? Are they excited to be there? Do they love being around the teammates? These are the kinds of guys that you can coach up when they get here much more easily into a higher level than the guys who have to kind of be pulled around because, okay, now we're over here in this part of the field, and then the next drill's on that part of the field, and I'm a little tired, and I'm just going to mosey on over there in the middle of the pack, right? It might be that you won't take that guy, but you will take the guy who was at the front of the pack when they went across the field. Then you look at the tape of what happened, and that's important. It's the most important thing, but it's not the only important thing. And that's why I think going and seeing things that are in between the cracks of the plays you see on tape can differentiate guys.
Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trev, I asked Brian Callahan last week about the Bengals' decision to take Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell in the 2021 draft. And he says it goes all the way back to when he worked with Peyton Manning and that they felt like guys on the outside that could make plays were more important than high-end offensive linemen. Said there was a big debate. He was on the Jamar Chase side of the debate between Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell. Said they liked them both a lot, and obviously they're both great NFL players. The Titans might be in a similar situation where a Joe Alt or Fashanu, the tackle from Penn State, might be sitting there, and Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, those wide receivers may be there. And, of course, he couched it with all players are different, situations are different. When it comes to the idea of I'd rather have the high-end guys that score touchdowns, what do you make of that? And what do you make of that for the Titans-specific situation where there may be a tackle there or tackles, and there may be a receiver or receivers there in that spot?
Well, fortunately, both positions are really deep in this draft. Tackle is as deep as I've ever seen it. They should be able to find guys that can be good players for them at tackle in the second round, third round, center same way, guard same way. And you're right that those elite receivers are hard to find. And when you've got them, it makes a difference. I mean, the Bengals got to the Super Bowl with an abysmal offensive line, but they had Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, and that opened things up, right? You look at the Miami Dolphins with Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver. He may have been the legitimate MVP of the league because when he was in there, they were unstoppable. When he was out, the Miami Dolphins offense kind of petered out a little bit. But that one guy forces so many changes in the defense in terms of the way the safeties have to play deeper and the way you've got to give coverage guys help, which takes somebody out of the box or takes them away from covering other guys deeper down the depth chart of the receiving core. That elite receiver makes a huge difference. Now, behind this offensive line of the Titans from this last year, I'm not sure it would have changed anything at all, right? But at the same time, if at number 7, somebody like a Marvin Harrison Jr. is available, or even a Roma Dunze from Washington, and the Titans take him because they find him graded materially higher than the highest rated offensive lineman that was available there, that wouldn't bother me at all, because those elite playmakers are the ones you've got to get when you're drafting at the top of the draft.
Trevor, do you think that you talked about all the tackles that may be available in this year's draft, and I've heard there's going to be a lot of receivers in this draft too. With the Titans, with all of the holes they have and all of the needs, and would this be a draft where we should be exploring what the bottom of the first round and middle of the second round may offer? Because could they not look at a scenario where trading out of 7 may provide them with the answer at multiple spots?
That's a great point, Jared. And you're right about that. You're absolutely right about that, especially if Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze, the top receivers in the group, if they're gone. And when you look at the mock drafts that are out right now, many of them have the top 6 picks as quarterbacks and pass catchers. Now, at that point, is there really that big of a difference between Joe Alt, who's probably the highest rated offensive tackle right now, and then you go down to Amarius Mims, the 5th rated on Mel Kiper's board from Georgia? Is there really that huge of a difference? There would be early in their career because Joe Alt is more NFL ready than Amarius Mims of Georgia because Mims hasn't played that many years. He just doesn't have that many starts under his belt. But from an athletic standpoint and just a natural ability standpoint, Mims is phenomenal. And so I think his future is very bright. It just take him a little bit of time to get up to that future. And so would you be better off trading from that 7th spot down to 15th and get more picks and be able to add guys like this? I think that's something they'll really have to consider. Now, if they took Joe Alt at number 7, I wouldn't bother me at all. But because of the depth at receiver and tackle and center and guard, they'll be able to get guys later in the first round, in the second round, even the third. I want you to think of a name, or remember this name, is Tez Walker out of North Carolina, wide receiver. One of the best deep threats in college football this year that didn't get much attention because the NCAA wouldn't let him play for the first half of the season. Finally, they just reversed it because they realized they were wrong. It was transfer issues and stuff like that. And Walker came out and just became an electrifying deep threat. And I don't know that he'll go in the first round. He'll probably be available in the second. So guys like that will be available if the Titans scout correctly and make the correct choices. There's a lot of depth.
Trevor Maddich, as always, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and by Houston Clinic Orthopedics when experience matters. Trev, great stuff. We'll talk to you from the Super Bowl next week.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddich joining us on the program. So I don't know how to feel about this Rand Carthon not being at the Combine or at the Senior Bowl thing. I don't know how to feel about it. Seems like it was kind of a big deal to Trevor. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Barry Trott's not with us today because the Predators play at home tomorrow against L.A., and Barry will join us at 5 o'clock tomorrow. So early start because the game's on TNT tomorrow. So Barry will meet us at 5 o'clock, and then Jared versus Joe will go down on Thursday. So we'll keep that there. So somebody texted in the last hour and said that Titans general manager Ran Carthon is not at the Senior Bowl, but that president of football operations, which apparently is not above general manager, executive vice president / general manager. President is not above that, even though I don't know how president's below vice president, but you'll have to take that up with them. But Chad Brinker is apparently there, and so are all the scouts. They're at the Senior Bowl. Now, last week, TD got on me about Ran Carthon saying that I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, lack of belief in Ran Carthon is personal. And I got to be honest with you guys. I don't think it is. My thing about the Titans is if you're good, I like you. If you're not, I'd rather have somebody else in there. I like Derrick Henry. Why? Because Derrick Henry is good. I do not like Trey Avery. Why? Well, let's not pick on Trey Avery, but we know that he's not very good. Same with the coaching, right? I mean, Mike Vrabel and I, no love lost there. I didn't cry when he got fired. And so, as I said last week, for me with Ran, it's not personal, it's personnel. It's a 270-pound center. That's the problem. But what came out in the aftermath of the Vrabel firing is that Ran is not incompetent. In fact, Ran is a great general manager, and that coaches around the league were lining up to want to work with Ran, and that Ran is got a great personality, and that he's got great people skills, and that he's a great evaluator of talent, and that, basically what I was told was you will see. You will see with Ran Carthon. I hope. So they introduces the coach last week. They give him full control, which is great because now there won't be any more of the, well, it's not his fault that they drafted Peter Skoronski with the 11th pick, even though only a moron drafts a guard with the 11th pick. No, now there won't be any more of that because the aftermath of the Vrabel thing is that, hey, Ran did a lot to placate Vrabel. Ran, he didn't do what he wanted to do because of Vrabel. That's fine. Whatever. I don't totally believe that, but you can say whatever you want. It always happens when somebody gets fired. When there's two people, one guy gets fired, it was always his fault. But then to find out that he's not at the Senior Bowl. And so I asked Trevor what he thought of that, and Trevor said that he was shocked at hearing that. And then I asked Trevor the question because, while Ian, back me up on this, there's no way Floyd Reese would have missed a Senior Bowl.
No, I don't think so.
I mean,
I find that hard to believe, yeah.
I think he'd be really mad if he found out that a Titan general manager wasn't at the Senior Bowl.
Do you think early in the week matters compared to later in the week when it comes to this kind of thing?
I don't think he would have missed one snap
of
the Senior Bowl. That's how much he cared about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but again, he GM'd in a different era. I'm trying to be fair here. He GM'd in a different era. Can we do this today where we can watch it virtually? Yeah, hey, upload the Senior Bowl practice, and then I can watch the tape in my office. And if we want to talk to Johnny, we can get a virtual interview with him. And if we want to, see how he did, go this way over here. And Chad can talk to him there. And so Chad can report back to me, and the scouts can report back to me. The John Robinson scouts, by the way. The John Robinson scouts can report back to me, and then, I can sit here in my office and do all of this, and then get to the combine and go to the combine with the board stacked and everything else, and then be able to pick the players. And Trevor said no. Now, I got to be honest with you guys, I don't like it. And I'm going to tell you why. Barry Trotz came on our show a couple weeks ago and was talking about how he was headed to Sweden for the World Championships or the Junior Championships?
World Juniors,
or whatever the hell it is. And he said, I think that our scouts, and it's Jeff Kelty who's in charge of that, right?
Which one now? He's the assistant GM, I think.
Yeah,
Jeff
in
Kelty.
charge of the prospects.
Yeah.
And he was like,
And Scott Nickel, it does Milwaukee.
he was like, yeah, those guys, I think they've got a great grasp on it. But Barry said he had to go because he needed to see those players. And I said to him right there on the air, I go, yeah, because you're the one who gets fired. Like if Barry Trotz picks the wrong guy, he gets fired. Not the assistant GM, but he gets fired. And so I'm sitting here thinking about like that and thinking about the fact that Rand's not at the Senior Bowl. And I'm like, is that really the best way for the general manager to have all of the information to be able to make these selections? Because here's how this works, or at least this is how this used to work in the Titans organization. It may not work that way now. I'm sure it probably does work this way. But the way that it was led to me was the entire country is divided in area scouts. You're on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast. You've got Texas, you've got the Southeast, you've got the whatever. And you grade all the players in your area. Then we've got a couple of cross-checkers that will go in different places, and they'll give their grades of the players they see. Then we rank them all up on the board. So if you've got the area for LSU, you have graded every LSU player. You have scouted LSU games. You have been to them. You have been to their practices. Everything you know about them goes up on that card, which gives them a grade, and then we organize the board. Now, the GM's watching tape and everything else, and in Floyd's case, he would go to the games. But again, the scouts give their grades, and now we organize the board. Then the combine. Then pro days. Then we reorganize the board one last time, and that's the board on draft night. And then you're looking up at the board because you've got split seconds to make these decisions. And all of a sudden, here you are, and a running back who's got a grade of the 6.75 is on the board, and a tight end that's got a grade of 6.74 is on the board, and the offensive coordinator says, I'd really like the tight end, and the coach says, I'd really like the running back, and then the scout that covered him says he's a great kid, and he's a... But ultimately, it's the GM who makes that call. Ultimately, it is the general manager who is sitting there in that moment who makes that decision. And I know the Titans want to be collaborative, but even they showed us that they were admitting that true collaboration, democracy does not work in an NFL organization. Somebody has to, when that clock is on, make that decision. And they've decided it's going to be Rand. And he's not at the Senior Bowl. And this is the stuff that I'm talking about. Like, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in today's era, they can do it without going to the Senior Bowl. Maybe the Chad Brinker can interview all these guys and it not be a problem. I don't know. But it just doesn't seem like the right step. When you know you're going to have to rebuild your entire team outside of the quarterback right now, quarterback and defensive tackle, that's what you've got. Shouldn't the guy who's going to be making these decisions, and I mean making them, and hopefully not rubber stamping them, but making them, shouldn't he be where you can judge the players? I got to understand if he was the general manager of the Chiefs. They're a little busy. But the Titans are not. So, I don't know. I don't like it. I mean, maybe I just am living in yesteryear, and Trevor said he didn't like it, and I don't know, man. I don't like it. Ian, do you have a problem with it?
I mean, ideally, I think I would like him to be down there the entire week. You know, it just doesn't give off good vibes or good optics. maybe he would show up later in the week and he wouldn't miss a whole lot. I don't know what really goes on earlier in the week and how much you actually miss. Does it take some time to get in and all that kind of stuff? It's only Tuesday. I think I'd like him to be down there. It just looks like you care a little bit more. So, I don't know.
I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Jerry was down at the Senior Bowl. I don't like it.
Maybe this is like some new protocol that they just send like the assistants early in the week. Are other teams doing this? How many other GMs are not there right now?
Agreed. I mean, I think we need to figure that out. 615-737-1025. But again, I'm not saying that it's like, a huge indictment, because ultimately whether or not they can draft these players, that's going to be what decides whether or not Rand's any good. And so we can sit here all day and bitch about how I complain about Rand or how you agree with me about Rand or whatever. I mean, what's going to decide this is if they get good players or not, and if they win football games based on the good players that they get. But I'll tell you, personally, I don't like it. And Trevor clearly didn't see that way either. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones next. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller takes great care of my home. In fact, I have Hiller coming out to the house later this week. Hiller is fantastic. That's right. I've had them for 6-7 years taking great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. 100% satisfaction. Happy you will be, or that service is free. That's right. That's their guarantee. They have got the best, and they offer true transparency pricing, which means that Hiller will line item every part of the job up front so a homeowner like you can easily understand what you're paying for and why. For example, they'll itemize parts and labor separately. It's easy. Again, no hidden fees, no added costs, and no surprises when it comes to Hiller. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Trevor, what do you make of that?
It's kind of an eye opener, isn't it? I mean, when I heard that, I was a little bit shocked because of how many position needs, how many places on this team they need to find guys, right? And the Senior Bowl is not just about first rounders. It's about identifying guys that you can pick up later in the draft that can help you. And so watching their body language, having the look in their eye, how they respond, if they struggle on a one-on-one and then come back and the next time they just drop anchor and just tear it up in the next one, you see a competitive nature in them, right? And you see that when you're on the field and you're looking at them. The problem with the combine is that they don't do any of that. The combine is just all these kind of drills that you run around and get timed, run around cones and jump up and down and do all the things you do. Football is a competitive thing and you're opposed at all times. And that's the great thing about Senior Bowl practices.
There you go. That was Trevor earlier today saying, yeah, it's kind of eye-opening there. Rand's not there. Brian Callahan's not there either. I don't have a problem with that. Well, yesterday I was like, is Brian Callahan not going to the Senior Bowl? Someone was like, yeah, I don't think, I think he's staying back here working on the coaching stuff. That's fine. The GM not at the Senior Bowl? Like, I don't know. Maybe we live in a different world, right? Like maybe ChatGPT will tell him what players to draft or, Chad Brinker can do all. I don't know. But I'm just telling you, like, the optics of it, I don't necessarily like it. I did promise your phones, though, 615-737-1025, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. AJ has been waiting patiently and is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. What's up, AJ?
What's going on? I like to say, man, with the Titans, I'm kind of half and half with the Mike Vrabel thing, but with me, it don't matter what kind of sports you play. I feel like that the coach should have control of their roster, and it's up to the GM to bring in players to fit that roster. Now, Ryan Carr, this is his first year doing it, and they're going to his second. I really feel like that, don't put too much on your plate. You got all these different titles now. When we were certain age, Mom, we fix our plates. We got teenagers, so we fix our plates. But she used to tell us, you better put enough on there that you're going to eat, because you put more than you don't sit there and eat the whole thing.
Well, they took a lot off his plate this year, though.
Yeah, but to have him have total control of the roster and listen to y'all talking about he's not even at the Senior Bowl practices or none of that stuff, sometimes you got to learn how to balance out the thing. Yeah,
Wow.
Mike Vrabel, he didn't want to fire some of his coaches and stuff. Yeah, did he not do certain things right? Yeah, but at the same time, out of 6 seasons, you only get 2 losing seasons.
Sure.
I understand when you come to GM, you want to bring in your guy, but I just want to hang up and listen.
Yeah. No, so as far as we can debate about who's got final say over the roster or whatever. I mean, Rand Carthon has final say over the roster. But the moves they made were actually to alleviate Rand of responsibility. That's what Chad Brinker's job is supposed to do. Like, Chad Brinker is in charge of the equipment people now. Not Rand, not the coach. So they don't have to worry about, did we make sure that we ordered the right cleats, Johnny? It's like, that's Chad Brinker's job. Chad Brinker's in charge of security. Guy gets popped with a DUI. The GM doesn't have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and figure out what they're doing. That's Chad Brinker's job. So they've actually taken off of his plate in order to have him focus on, again, the players and the organization. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, he's here in Nashville because of the coaching interviews. Well, I'm sorry. The players are more important for the GM than the coaches. Like, the coach, you just hired a coach. The coach can go through that and get you down to the finalists and bring in the finalists for you to interview, and you can find a way. In fact, a lot of coaching interviews in the past have gotten done at the Senior Bowl. So they can find a way to do both. So I don't totally get. One texter says, I agree with TD. You are too hard on Rand. You really let him not calling you back over Kevin Byard get to you be better. But to which I would say, if I really cared about that individual situation so much, then why didn't I make a bigger deal about it when it happened? I mean, I think it's a big deal. I think it is the job of the general manager that when there is a situation that may come up, and that became a situation, I think it is the job of the general manager to address it. But again, when that happened, I mean, he didn't call back. I went with what I had. It became a massive story. And again, they had to deal with it. But I didn't bring that up or make it a big deal until later, until after the draft press conference when Rand told the media to be positive, and that was a really bad look. I didn't bring that up until afterwards when we talked about the fact they had a 270-pound center and they had Andre Dillard at left tackle. I didn't bring that up until afterwards when all the smoke was coming out about how Vrabel and Rand don't like each other, don't see eye to eye, or whatever it may be. It's not about me, folks. Again, the Titans are saying, hey, it's all Vrabel's fault. Give Rand another chance. Okay. I mean, I don't really have a choice. He's going to be the one in charge here. I don't think it's going to work out for them. But then he ends up not going to the Senior Bowl. And the Titans are an organization that make the Senior Bowl a big deal for two reasons. Number one, the Senior Bowl is 2 hours south. It's not like it's across the country. And number two, they send all their people there every year. Oh, we got media updates from the Senior Bowl because the Titans send their entire thing and they do all these interviews and everything. They make a big deal about it. Now they're not going? And again, I don't mind if the head coach doesn't go to the Senior Bowl because the head coach is worried about the coaching staff. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with, though, is when it comes to setting the draft board, like how much input is the GM going to have on that? Or are they just going to tell him what it is, and he's going to go to the combine with the board lined up the way that they put it, and he's just going to go there? Like, I don't know. Like, again, I don't want to be mean or rude or say anything that anyone's going to get all mad about because, again, it's the Senior Bowl. I just don't like it. There are a lot of jokes about Rand's Hat Company into the text line. Texter says, Jared, he's the executive vice president. He does not have time for nonsense like the Senior Bowl. Amazing. Oof. Man. Again, like, I personally don't like it. Kinston says, I overrate the Senior Bowl attendance. John and Mike went for years only to pick players like Des Fitzpatrick, Malik Willis, and Dylan Radins. So I don't think that that's what makes the Senior Bowl bad, right? Like, that's just me. I don't think that the fact that the Titans picked Dylan Radins, who participated in the Senior Bowl, means that the Senior Bowl is bad. And I understand it's a different era. Because if it wasn't a different era, I would be going crazy. But Floyd Reese would be going to that Senior Bowl. I mean, the Senior Bowl, Floyd died in August of 2021. In January of 2022, they took a moment of silence to honor Floyd at the Senior Bowl because the Senior Bowl was such a big deal to him. But again, I am willing to accept that it's a different era, and I don't know how many teams don't send their GMs to the Senior Bowl. But, like, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Titans. I don't know about you guys, but they need some players. Like, they need some players. More your phone, 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. What do you make of Rand Carthon being given full control over the roster?
I mean, he's the GM. I think he should have it. You know, most organizations, that would be the case, and unless it's Bill Belichick or probably Jim Harbaugh is going to command a little bit more than most head coaches also. So, look, I'm kind of with you, Jared. I've been listening to your show this week also about it. I haven't been given a lot of evidence that he's a good general manager, but he is the general manager. So if you want a clear line of communication and a clear responsibility chart of what everyone's doing, the general manager should ultimately be in charge of personnel, and that's good and bad. He's accountable for it. We're not asking questions about who's drafting whom or who's going after whom in free agency or who we're blaming, the coach or the GM. It's on the GM ultimately. So I like that part of it, that he's now fully accountable for whatever mistakes he makes moving forward. But to say that I'm thrilled about it and overly confident in his ability as a GM, he's 0 for 1. He's had one off season, and it was terrible. So I don't have any evidence to say he's going to be a good general manager, but I like the fact that at least they're being clear on what his responsibilities are moving forward.
There you go. That was Chad last week on Rand Carthon. Again, we just found this out in the text line at 4:25 today that Rand Carthon is not at the Senior Bowl. He may go down there later this week. We don't know. Chad Brinker is there. And as Trevor said, it was eye-opening. Now, again, I still wonder if we can, do everything remote nowadays, so maybe we can scout remote. I don't know. But personally, I don't like it. Let's go to your phones. Lorenzo is up next and has been waiting patiently. What's up, Lorenzo?
Hey, what's up, Jared? Hey, so let me give you my spiel on Rand. Now, I can understand the fact of him not going to the Senior Bowl or whatever. I get that. But let's not act like he's been terrible. First of all, when you look at the offseason as being terrible, look at who he drafted and look at the players that he brought in. Okay, Andre Dillard, outside of that, all GMs make mistakes. The last that I saw, we haven't been to the Super Bowl in '99, so there has not been a successful GM at all, period. So looking at that, you bring in D-Hop, our best receiver, Al Shahir, our best linebacker, fifth in the league in tackles. You look at Will Levis being drafted in the second round, who could be your franchise quarterback. You look at Tajay Spears, your third-round running back that could be your starting running back. You look at Sean Murphy-Bunting, our best corner. It's like you are really spinning a negativity about
Sean Murphy-Bunting sucks.
Even if he sneezes wrong, even if he sneezes wrong, it's negative.
If you're pumping Sean Murphy-Bunting as a reason that we should have faith in this, I am scared for the future of Titan football.
These are proven deals. These are proven deals that these guys have. So Sean Murphy-Bunting was our best. The guys he signed have been our best players. So his first year, I think, was a pretty good job, given this is his first year. And for him to be bad, he got promoted. So that doesn't sound like Amy thinks he's bad.
Hey, Lorenzo, you're right. I mean, you're right. He got promoted. Thank you for your call.
He did.
Here's my thing about all those guys you mentioned, right? Levis in the second round. So, again, we're told that these are all collaborations and whatever. If you thought he was a franchise quarterback, you draft him 11th. That's how this works. You draft the quarterback 11th, and now the Titans are one less year of contractual control for Levis, and they let every other team in the league get a crack at drafting him. So when it comes to that, sure, Levis might be a starting quarterback in the NFL. We don't know, but he might be down the road. But if you were going to put all your eggs in his basket, why would you let the other teams across the league be able to draft him? That doesn't make any sense. That's the point I'm making here, which is we can take one little factoid and say this is good, right? But then when we extrapolate that to the total context of it, every single one of these things, it's like, well, I mean, that's not really all that impressive. Azeez Al-Shaair is a backup, guys. He made all those tackles this year because there was nobody else to tackle. Jack Gibbons was the other guy there. Azeez is going to hit the market. He's going to sign another 1 year, $4 million contract. Okay? Aaron Brewer, bad signing, and Rand was a part of that. As much as I think that probably had to do with Vrabel. And notice how Lorenzo didn't bring up the first-round draft choice when talking about all the good things. And then again, it's the other stuff, right? It's the press conferences. It's the media. Be positive about this. It's the lack of confidence that a typical general manager should show if he's running an entire organization. One texter said, if Rand was at the Senior Bowl, you'd feel the same about him. You've already made your opinion, and it's not going to change until the Titans win. And here's what I'll say about this. It wouldn't change my opinion, but he should be there. He shouldn't get credit for being at the Senior Bowl when it is completely expected that he would be at the Senior Bowl. I've been texting with some media people, and I'm like, because I'm just hearing of this. And I'm like, did you know Rand's not at the Senior Bowl? And they're like, wait a minute, what? I'm like, that's what I heard. But I don't know how you can argue that it was a good first year and then use Sean Murphy Bunting as your example. Like the DeAndre Hopkins thing. I mean, it wasn't like the Titans went out of their way to go get DeAndre Hopkins. The Titans sat there and waited and waited and waited and waited, and they got DeAndre, and DeAndre had a nice season. But had Arizona not released him, and had none of these other teams wanted him, then you would have been stuck with Treylon Burks at wide receiver this year. So while it worked out, it's like some of Dan Campbell's stupid stuff. Sometimes it works. It doesn't make it right. And again, the process with which the Titans are operating under, they're operating under the just trust us. Hey, just trust us. It'll be fine. And that's okay, but then you want me to trust you and then you don't go to the Senior Bowl? I mean, I don't know. Texture says, how many Super Bowl victories would it take for you to give an on-air apology to Rand Carthon? One Super Bowl. I'll do whatever it takes for one Super Bowl. So some texter says that Rand Carthon was the assistant GM at San Francisco, and he was the only one going to the Senior Bowl, and they turned out just fine. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's different for a team that's still playing. Like, if you're still playing, that's fine. If in the past John Lynch and them didn't go, look, it might be, as I asked Trevor, and I said, Trevor, in today's era, can all this stuff be done virtually? Can all this stuff be done where you can go into the database and watch all of the film from the Senior Bowl and, Zoom a guy for an interview if you need to? Can you do this all from your office? And he said no. Now, I'm sure there's some egghead from Harvard who tells me the answer is yes. So I am open to that possibility. What's happening here is that, as I said, again, I don't like it. I don't find this as incompetent as some of the other things that they've done because I don't know the whole context of who goes to the Senior Bowl nowadays and, how important, can Chad Brinker bring everything back from the Senior Bowl and everything else. I just say I don't like it, and then this turns into a whole, Jared, you said and you went crazy, and I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, I'm not sure I really like it that much. Skyler says the Eagles took Jalen Hurts in the second round. Right. And they didn't think he was their franchise quarterback. They didn't think Jalen Hurts was their franchise quarterback when they drafted him. They didn't think Jalen Hurts was their franchise quarterback after they benched Carson Wentz in favor of him because they hired Nick Sirianni from Indianapolis to try to work with Wentz. And then Wentz still wanted out, so they sent Wentz to Indianapolis. Then they didn't think Jalen Hurts was their franchise quarterback after that when they tried to trade for Russell Wilson. Their eggs, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, their eggs were not in Jalen Hurts' basket until Jalen Hurts went crazy and then they signed him to the big deal under Shane Steichen, which apparently is a big deal. Tucker asks, how can last year be on Rand if Vrabel was the one making the calls? Again, we don't have any Vrabel wasn't making the calls. It's just now what's happened is the revisionist history is bad decisions were Vrabel, good decisions were Rand, and that's why we should not count last year. And that's fine. I mean, look, my basketball program at Louisville, we have Kenny Payne as the coach. And he's the worst coach in the history of college basketball. He will be fired at the end of the year. And Kenny Payne got up there a couple weeks ago and tried to argue that his first year didn't count. That did not go over well with the fans. But that's because the fans have already made up their mind on him. Next year, if the team's not good and they try to argue last year didn't count, fans aren't going to listen to that here either. But Mark says, what are the possibilities Rand can do the Senior Bowl remotely? To me, it's optics. You get promoted and given total power a week ago, and the first chance you have to prove your worth by showing your face as the leader of the franchise is a no-show. Ridiculous. That's from Mark in Murfreesboro. I don't know, like, if you don't have to go anymore. Like, look, I don't know. But it seems like there's a lot of surprise from a lot of people. Chris says, isn't this all speculation of what you read in the text line? No, we've got it confirmed that he's not there. Steven says, my concern about Rand skipping the Senior Bowl isn't so much about the talent scouting, but I just wonder about Rand as a football guy passing up the football convention of sorts. I mean, look, man, I want my Senior Bowl. I want my GM at the Senior Bowl. And I will say this, even if my team made the Super Bowl, I think there's a chance I'd want my GM at the Senior Bowl. Now, I can understand the idea of like, hey, we may need to work out an inside backer that might be on the practice squad and that we may elevate on game day for the Super Bowl or something like that. I understand. And there may be some other commitments or whatever that the GM has to attend to so that the coaching staff can focus on getting ready for the Super Bowl. And so if a GM misses the Senior Bowl, okay, fine, whatever, because his team's in the Super Bowl. Other than that, personally, and I don't know how many other GMs don't go or do go, but when I'm 2.5 hours away, I want my GM going to the Senior Bowl. Like, I want my GM going there. Like, that's why, and again, another person says, Brian Callahan is collaborating with Rand to build the coaching staff. That's great, but the players are more important than the coaches. And I know that because the old man used to believe that, and he was a coach. So I want my GM at just where we sit right now. I want my GM at the Senior Bowl. And I'm disappointed that my GM of the team I root for is not at the Senior Bowl. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. I heard the stupidest tidbit of misinformation this morning on the Robbie and Rex Road program. It must be addressed, and it will. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
there's nothing that Patrick can do, in my opinion, that takes away from what I tried to accomplish in my career. And there's nothing that I did can take away from what he's trying to accomplish. I feel like all I tried to be was the best I could be. And I didn't, even though I had sporting idols, like I said, I could never be Steve Young. I could never be Joe Montana. Those are the guys I could never be. Dan Marino or John Elway. These were my childhood idols. And they had incredible careers, and they put as much as they could into their career, and I really respect them for that. And I just tried to do the same thing. And believe me, if anybody can go out there and win 7 Super Bowls, I have so much respect for them. I understand how difficult it is.
That is the greatest quarterback who ever lived, one Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Now, we talked about this yesterday on the show. This is coming. Be ready for it, especially if Mahomes wins the Super Bowl this year, that Brady and Mahomes, it's going to be the new Jordan LeBron. Like, it's going to be who's better, Brady or Mahomes, whatever. And, in a couple years, maybe Mahomes will be better than Brady. He's not now. But on the Robbie and Rex Road program this morning, Paul and Joe were discussing about a quarterback that is not elite in Brock Purdy and winning a Super Bowl and what that means. And Joe Rexrode made this claim about the greatest quarterback who ever lived.
Okay, who's the last non-elite quarterback? I will tell you this. You know who the last non-elite quarterback was to win a Super Bowl? Tom Brady's last Super Bowl. He was actually subpar a lot of that year, and that Super Bowl was about Patrick Mahomes not being able to take a breath in the pocket. Their defense was incredible. Yeah. He had incredible receivers. He was not vintage, just like Peyton Manning is another example of a non-elite quarterback, even though he's Peyton Manning.
But you can't call late career Tom Brady and late career Peyton Manning Brock Purdy.
Okay, I agree with Paul there. But I also don't think you can call late career Tom Brady late career Peyton Manning. Late career Peyton Manning was legitimately washed up. He had been benched for Brock Osweiler. He couldn't feel his fingertips anymore. He was good for about one throw a game. Now, he was still smart, and he could still read the defense and do all the Peyton stuff, but that was a team where Peyton was a passenger. Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware were the drivers, and they ended up in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady was not a passenger on the Buccaneers. Tom Brady was not washed up. And that is the most revisionist history bullcrap I have ever heard. Tom Brady, the year after they won that Super Bowl, led the NFL in passing yards, touchdowns, and yards per game. Tom Brady in 2020 threw 40 touchdown passes. The next year he threw 43 touchdown passes. What are they talking about? What is Joe talking about? Tom Brady washed up, not elite, in 2020. We always talk about the quarterbacks that you have to go through in order to win a Super Bowl, and that's why Lamar Jackson can't ever do it. His route to the Super Bowl included beating Drew Brees in the Dome, Aaron Rodgers in the snow, and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady threw for 280 and 3 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. 3 touchdowns, no picks, had a quarterback rating of 125.8 in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady at the end of the season, when they got good, remember they started off slow, he was new to the team, COVID, no offseason. Tom Brady that year, at the end of the season, the last 4 games they won, 196, 2 touchdowns, 390, 2 touchdowns, 348, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 399, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. That is not washed up. That is elite. That is top of the game. What is Joe talking about? And I heard that, and I almost wrecked my car this morning when I heard, Brady and Manning at the end, they weren't the same. No, Manning wasn't the same at the end. Brady was the same at the end. Even last year, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't win any games because they got their entire offensive line hurt before the start of the season and their defense, for whatever reason, was horrible, Brady was still slinging the ball all over the yard. What are we talking about here? One texter says, have to look at the division they played in. Yeah, you mean the one with Drew Brees in it? That was a pretty good division back then. Remember all the people that said they couldn't believe that Tom Brady would go to that division because Drew Brees was in it? Didn't matter. I mean, I still think Tom Brady might be elite today. That if somebody sliced their hand open and couldn't play quarterback, and it was like, okay, we can go to Blaine Gabbert, or we can sign Tom Brady off the street to start this week, I think you'd be much, 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 much better with Brady. Joe, what are we talking about? One texter says, never trust Joe's takes. He also said he'd trade 3 first-round picks for Bryce Young. Well, you know. Another texter said bad division. Drew Brees was in the division. Oh, goodness gracious. I couldn't believe that. Crazy. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. We'll see you at 2 tomorrow. We'll be live from Bridgestone Arena where Barry Trotz will join us at 5 o'clock. Speaking of the Predators, we broke down their issues and their conundrum at the start of the show. Our replay's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.